Where's our packet? Okay. Good?
Yes.
Alright, it is Monday, January 27th, 1:02 PM. We are going to start this work session of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners.
We're here with, community planning and development.
Oh, this one looks a little bit different. I edited the one that Lauren sent over, so hopefully I edited the correct one.
This is the most like a master slide deck, because I don't know when you edited it.
Sorry.
Don't share stuff. Oh, today.
So, can I pull from the page or no?
Yeah, we can do that instead of the master slide deck.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I do, cause I added in the things that went to me.
Yes, this is
So-
just,
If we can take it from that, that one looks a little bit different. I wanted to do the spreadsheet with the building,
Oh.
and so this got those in it, so that would be
Okay.
good. If we could do it from there.
hold on a second.
Yeah, it's in the general,
And this-
oh, it's in CLT.
Yeah. Let me copy it over. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and then I'll get it ready.
Absolutely. So excited to be speaking today with the Board of County Commissioners. I'm Ann Schneider, the Director of Community Planning and Development. This is Melissa Kendrick. I'll let everybody else on my team kind of go ahead and do their own introduction.
I'm the deputy planning director.
I'm Jackie Rellahan, the Housing Program Manager. So the three of us, and when we get to our organization chart, these ladies help me oversee the department in just daily operations as well.
Keep going. Who are you? Where'd you come from?
So I am, okay, we'll keep going. So as some of you may know, I grew up in Leadville and graduated in the late 80s, went away to college, lived overseas, lived in Iceland and England for a while. I was living in Iceland for 2 years before I came back to Lake County in the 90s. I got into real estate development, owned a real estate company, did consulting work, and then found the county about 11 years ago and came on as a planner for the department. And worked in the department and took over the directorship in 2022. I have 5 daughters and 8 grandchildren, and getting a stab at parenting all over again because I am parenting a 2nd and 3rd grader. So not only do I have grown children who are wonderful and amazing grandkids, but I'm also have a 7 and 9-year-old at home too. Just a little fun fact about me.
You're hard to, follow in. Yeah, I know, she does nothing.
Wait a second, Ann, that's something I didn't know about. You said you lived in Greenland?
Iceland.
Iceland?
I lived in Iceland for 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah. I was in Iceland before it was hip and trendy.
Okay,
So,
And
I
Iceland
was
is
there
green?
in, I was in Iceland in, let's see, I came back in 92. So I was there from 90 to 92, 1990 to 1992.
wow,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Iceland is green and Greenland is
That's
Iceland.
right, the little trick that they played and to get everybody to go to Greenland instead.
Sorry, Melissa, I interrupted you.
I went to the Blue Lagoon, of course.
Oh, right, nice.
We're still filling up a little bit, so I am, was born in Lake County, so I'm one of these people whose my great-great-grandparents came here, several of them. And so my family has been in the community ever since in one way or another. About 3 years ago, I bought a house here, and so I've sort of been making my way back. I was working, I had my own consulting firm, representing developers and property owners. And so had the opportunity to go work for the county And understanding the great need for building capacity, I jumped in September. So I'm relatively new in that position, I'm not new to Lake County or even some of the planning issues. So I was very excited to come on board while we're doing all of this big master planning work, kind of the comprehensive plan and a lot of other plans to really look at where we're going, how we're gonna get there. So I'm delighted to be on the team.
We recruited Melissa. We said, you need to get on our side of the table.
Love it, love it.
I think I'm saved.
Oh.
You still got you.
How many dogs do you have?
I have 2 dogs and my son's dog. Well, he's in the academy, so 3 dogs and 3 cats, it's too many. It's a problem. I lifted up the kitty litter and threw my back out this morning, so.
Oh.
Sorry.
My background is, I've been in Lake County for 3 decades, so just brand new. And worked for the county for 10 years. I started out in, property management and got my real estate license, have done that for a long time, and then became an appraiser for the county, and then moved into this role as housing program manager. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We have a housing workshop coming up on Thursday, so we'll get to learn all about what we've been doing. But thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
So it looks like we're ready to talk about community planning and development. And so, as you know, Lake County is a statutory county, and pursuant to that, our statutory citations can be found in Title 29 and Title 30. All things that affect our community planning and development world. In accordance with Senate Bill 35, Senate Bill 35 required subdivision regulations of the division of lands under 35 acres. So we have been compliant with that regulation and adopted subdivision regulations in 1972. Then under the Land Use Act of 1974, which enabled us to, our enabling act, we followed up to that act with adoption of our zoning code in 1976. So we're under what is known as a Euclidean model zoning, which just simply means that the county is divided into different districts, urban residential, ag forestry, ag residential, business being some of them. And under each of those districts, and according to zoning, uses are regulated. So we have a table of uses, and under each of those districts, uses are either a use by right or require a conditional use permit, which you will hear, and you'll do a conditional review, or they're prohibited. Zoning also looks at things like dimensional standards, setbacks, height, minimum occupied space, minimum lot size, issues like that. We've been under the jurisdiction of a building code since 1982. At that time, it was known as the Uniform Building Code, or the UBC code. In somewhere probably mid to late 90s, we started utilizing the International Code Series, or the ICC codes. And so we are currently under the 2018 ICC code for the building department. In 2022, when I took over the department, it was formerly known as Building and Land Use, and really understanding that there were better tools out there, better processes, better organizational structure that could really support the citizens of our community and bring in better building and planning results. We restructured the department to be community planning and development. And as I go through the department, I'll kind of highlight what we added. But luckily the Board of County Commissioners and Tim got behind the vision to evolve the department into a little broader scope and more resources. So we'll talk about that coming up. We also have an IGA, or intergovernment agreement, with the city of Leadville. And so through that agreement, we administer the building code for both the city and the county. So all building permits are pulled, and plan reviews are done in our department, and all inspections are dispatched through our department. So we do that for both the city and the county. And when we took over the department, one of the big things was to get the city and the county on the same building code. For a period of time, they were under two different codes, and so we really wanted to have that uniformity and make sure that we were all using the same codes. It just was more efficient and consistent. Okay, next slide. I really wanna highlight for you how critical land use applications are and the powers that you have under the land development code. So I love this. This, really talks about crafting communities through zoning, and I'm just gonna actually read the slide, something I don't do very often, but I think this is really empowering and really highlighting what these decisions do. Because zoning is more than a bureaucratic process. It's a fundamental part of how we shape the space we live in, whether ensuring the orderly development of a growing city or county or community, protecting the environment or preserving community character. Zoning laws are a tool for balancing the diverse needs of residents, businesses, and nature. By understanding the power and implications of zoning, we can advocate for more inclusive, sustainable, and vibrant communities that reflect the shared vision of all who call them home. So your land use decisions, you're gonna hear your first big land use hearing on February 10th. It's the major subdivision, planned unit development. And these decisions are lasting. So we really have to, we're looking for stewardship, consistency with our code, and really meeting our comp plan and our development code through these processes. But as you know, and we're gonna talk about this in a lot more detail with DOLA, but you sit as the judge, the judicial entity making these very critical decisions that really change the landscape and character of our community forever. So just wanna kind of highlight how important that process is. Next slide. So the mission within CPD is promoting the health, safety, and welfare of both the built and the natural environment. You'll hear that throughout almost every staff report, finding that we bring to you. It is at the core of what we do in our recommendations and what we bring forth to you. So we provide essential services through the adoption of all of the items that we talked about in the first slide. Our building department, we are currently under the 18 ICC codes. We look to update these code cycles, updates are done, or ICC model codes are updated every 3 years. So right now the 2024 codes just came out. We're under the 18, and so we're gonna be going to our board of review, which is your construction industry recommending body, and start talking about the next adoption of a new building code. Matt participated in the last one that we did when we did the update to that 18. The department processes, reviews, and administers building, plumbing, mechanical, roofing, and solar permits. The only type of permit that we don't hands-on oversee are electrical. Electrical permits are done by the state. And so a member of the community goes on the DORA site and they can apply and get their electrical permit, and then our electrical inspector is currently coming up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So our electricians and general contractors manage that piece. And final inspections have to be done before we CO or we complete projects, but we do that coordination with the state. We also, in 2022, based on a request not only from residents, but also from our local contractors, they were saying that, there's been a huge boom in custom building, and so what was getting reported back to us, or maybe it's just been consistent, maybe there's always been a consistent amount of custom building in the area. What we were hearing is that some maybe less than competent contractors were taking on scopes of work and then not being able to complete the projects. And so we had residents in just talking about large sums of money that had been paid out, and they were having all kinds of problems. Local contractors were saying, hey, we've got some bad players in our community and they are breaking trust, and I'm trying to come in now and restore that trust, and it's really difficult. They have really injured our local industry. And so because of that, when we did our adoption of the 18 I codes, the Board of Review determined that we should we have some education requirements for general contractors. So general contractors are required to have an ICC certification for either residential or commercial, whatever type of building permits that they're pulling. And so they can either have that designation or a building inspector certification. So we do have a higher standard now that we ask for general contractors to hold. And once they have that registration, then it's up to them to do their continuing education. We also look at reciprocal kind of things. If, let's say you pull permits in a metro area that has testing, we'll recognize that. If you bring in and say, we're a registered contractor, we tested with them and we have our credentials, we go ahead and accept that as well. But we just wanted to elevate the industry, both for the residents that were coming in and saying, we've got some problems locally, and our local contractors who were saying, hey, we've got some people out there suggesting that they're contractors and they really aren't. So to respond to that, we now have that as part of our registration process. But I do wanna let you know that we've always kept that fee very low. It's $50 to register as a contractor. We never wanted that cost of it to be a barrier. And so other than that, it's just the $50 and proof of liability insurance. So other than, being able to kind of have a standard of being able to represent, $1 million builds, the other items that are required are pretty nominal. On the planning side of the department, we've increased capacity. At one point, I was the only planner on staff in 2022, and so Cece Williams joined our department. She's our planner one, and then Melissa has an extensive background in planning, so very excited to be able to now have 3 members of the team that all have planning expertise. And so the planning side of the department oversees the land development code, and we look at things like subdivision, platting, conditional use, code amendments, land unit development, site plans, rezoning, variances, and then long-range planning, which is our comp plan, and that's something we're gonna kind of put a pin in because we're gonna do some more discussion on that coming up. Sanitation, this is something that was expanded in our department. We took over from public health the Lake County sanitation regulations, and we oversee on-site wastewater systems, or OWTS, plan review and inspection. So that was something that was added to the department with CPD, so was housing. So Jackie joins us, and largely most of her work centers around development, policy, planning, grant administration, and management, which is huge and broad. That encompasses a lot of different aspects. We added mapping and GIS, really excited about that. It is amazing what the geographic information systems and interactive mapping can do. It was a huge tool that we used in backcountry. We can look at, in that area, we could look at the interplay with public lands, we could look at roadless areas, we could look at topography, we could pull out so many different layers and able to help be informed in that process. And it's really exciting where GIS can take us, and in both from like an economic development standpoint as well as our planning, future and long range planning. GIS is just really an exciting, intricate tool to everything that we do. So it's a very important added component. And then code enforcement. Code enforcement was added on as well. So in the past model, and my predecessor and the director of the department tried to do enforcement, and I would say there were a lot of stops and starts. So lots of kind of heated, letters, or with a lot of authority, letters were sent out, but then nothing really ever became of a lot of those efforts. Understood that code enforcement done correctly really is an FTE who can make better strides in progress, which has already been seen with the inclusion of code enforcement. So at some point, I'd love to share out, not today, but just kind of how many cases we have been able to bring to satisfactory close. We always do code enforcement with an educational standpoint. We're not overly punitive when we start the process. we always, we think of it as kind of an outreach to begin with. We always take the approach of, you probably didn't realize this, so let's give you some information and let's see if we can come to a workable situation. That approach has been incredibly beneficial. And there's not a lot that happens in the county that we don't interface with, so some other things that we oversee and take care of are special event permits, commercial recreation roadway permits, floodplain administration, natural resource management, transportation planning. We have a part in climate action planning, county capital project planning, and economic development. So we have overlaps, or definitely we provide capacity and support around those as well. Community collaboration is something that was part of our outline that they wanted us to talk about, and I think that we really pride ourselves on the way that we go out and engage with the community. We do that in your traditional town hall meetings. We also do that in small group sessions, personal interviews, and community surveys. Design charrettes are another way that we engage, public hearings, and then partnerships with the consulting groups. When we get into a specific area of study like short-term rentals, we brought in economic planning systems to help us with that, and then we build out the community engagement. But we're a department that are constantly out in the public, talking to them about policy and trending topics and current impacts. So we're a department that's really out there in the community. CBD holds weekly staff meetings, and then we have standing meetings with other departments that we really interface with often, so like Public Works. And then every other, twice a month, every other week, we are meeting with the city planning department. So city planning is something new in Leadville. The city added Chapin LaChance to their as their planning director, and so we have this opportunity for the first time, in the past couple of years, to be able to start interfacing with the city on overlap. So it's really exciting to be able to have that integrated relationship. The community development team, so this is something that was developed in 2022, and so whenever we get new development in who is knocking at our door, is interested in possible development in Lake County, we activate this group to have a conversation and start explaining to them what is important in our community, what our restraints are, what our goals, what our objectives are. And some examples of who participates in this is Parkville Water, Leadville Sanitation, the school district, Public Works, Emergency Services, PROS, law enforcement, housing, public health, Lake County Soils Conservation. It's an open group. So depending on what the nature of the development is, we'll be pulling in other members of our community to have very early conversations. This happens under our code. Every land use application has to have a pre-app with staff. This happens before then. And the result of this are both our previous Board of County Commissioners and our Planning Commission are saying, wow, these applications that are coming in are the best we've ever seen. So we come in imposing, or instead of development kind of imposing themselves on us as a community, the thought is that we inform them. What is important to us? What do we want to see out of the development? Where are we headed as a community? So it's a different approach that came along with the changeover within the department. But we're really proud of it and really think that it's bringing in better development, more cohesive. We've got all the partners at the table. Even that organic space has Parkville Water and Public Works at the same table, or so it's just really nice to have those cross-department and kind of team approach to development. We've already talked kind of about these during your appointment. The Planning Commission is something that we are staffed for. It's a 5-member, 2 alternate member board that you appointed. They provide you support on all land use applications. They participate and hold the joint public hearing on all land use applications. Board of Adjustment, this is a 3-member, 2 alternate board that hears variances from our zoning code. Keep in mind that you cannot ask for a variance from like a use. If a use is prohibited in a zone district, the Board of Adjustment doesn't have the authority to do variances on something like that. They are typically dimensional standards that they're also an appellant board for any type of interpretation made by the zoning official or an administrative decision that we've made. So they're also an appellant board for that. Board of Review is your building industry experts who help you with the adoption of the building code. And they are also an appeal, they also hear appeals on any decisions made by the building official or through the interpretation of the building code. Board of Health, we participate with the Board of Health through upholding the sanitation regulations. And then public hearings and the quasi judicial process. This is one place, there's several places in this presentation we're gonna put a pin in because we're going to have either work sessions or trainings on the topics. And this one is set for the 31st with DOLA, and we're really gonna get into the quasi judicial process. I do know that Lauren gave you the business cards. So if you have constituents approaching you already about anything that's gonna be a pending land use application, you can tell them, that you're very interested and to get a hold of staff, and we will help them get them any information. Well, we can take in written statements from them, whatever, but we can assist them. So we're also gonna update those. We read them and I think we can word that even better. So if you have any input on what you'd like those cards to say, we were gonna, we thought that we could kind of wordsmith that a little bit of, your opinions and thoughts really matter kind of approach, and here's how to protect my vote on these matters. So we'll work on getting you some business cards, but it's just really nice to have something with contact information so your constituents can get support.
We're going into a deeper dive on this on the 31st this month?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon with
Alright.
DOLA for 2 hours. All right. Comprehensive plan, super excited, there are some commissioners who never get this opportunity to actually be part of creating the new comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plans are recommended to be done and suggested by statute every 10 years at a minimum. So you can do them more often, but we are at that 10-year point, and so we're really excited to be doing this. Your comprehensive plan addresses elements like, by statute, it has to recreation and tourism, but on top of that, transportation, land use, economic development, affordable housing, environmental issues, parks and open space, natural and cultural resources, hazards, capital improvements, water supply and conservation, efficiency in government, sustainability and energy. This is your long-range guiding document, and it provides the framework from all other plans. The first finding on any land use application you will ever have is, does it align with your comp plan? So this is your overarching master plan for the community. So super exciting to be doing it. And we're also doing it in a way we've never done it in the history of our community. And I know I spoke about this community coffee, so won't try to be repetitive. But we're doing it with the city. And so that has never done. The city and the county have had 2 separate plans. And so hearing again, the community would really like that efficiency in government. And most residents don't even know where jurisdictional lines are, honestly. So it is, hence the One Community Project, 2-part project that we're gonna talk more about in greater detail. But the first part is that values to create the shared vision that will inform the comp plan. There is a website already, the onecommunityproject.com, if you wanna go there, and then we're gonna do on that same time when we talk with DOLA, we're gonna talk more about the comprehensive plan and our partnership with the city and community builders. So we'll go into more detail then. Housing, and again, just a brief, because Jackie's really gonna dive into housing at 10-2 and the Harrison Park project, but these 2 projects are something the department is adding capacity and helping support. And this is coming out of our housing needs assessment, and I'm gonna leave that for Jackie to talk about, but that is something that our department is definitely supportive of. The Leadville Lake County Building Department, so I have a slide coming up after the budget that just kind of breaks this out a little bit. But there's been, for decades, we have gone to a third party to provide our building inspection and plan review. And we give 75% of all of the revenue that we take in on building permits to that third party. So we are suggesting that it would be beneficial to create a full-time employee that is staffed through the county to do that. We believe that we'll have better local control and we'll have better buy-in. So typically we share our inspector with other communities like Minturn and Eagle County. And so sometimes, I think currently it's working pretty well, but we do think that it would be really wonderful for consistency and for buy-in to have a local inspector. We also have a slide that's gonna show you what kind of cost savings that will be. We do anticipate when our building inspector gets very busy, as they do in building season, we may have to have some additional help from a third party like Schumes Coda for plan review. And so our budget reflects that, but we still are going to show you in that slide what kind of cost savings we can have from having an FTE versus this third party who's taking 75% of that revenue. We are also gonna be looking at our legislative mandate to update our adaptive building code. We have to stay within 2 cycles of the energy code, and it only makes sense at the same time to update our building codes. So we will be working with the Board of Review to look at the timing of the next adoption of the newest building code. We call in code experts to help us through that process, because it's a substantial undertaking. Last one, COVID kind of disrupted our ability to get it adopted, but it did take us well over a year and a half to get it done, I think. Is that, if you remember that, I don't know, but I think it was about a little over a year and a half. We have just hired the consultant to help us with an impact fee study. So what this is basically a infrastructure funding study is what I would say. But it's going to look at the impact of new development on public infrastructure, emergency services, and housing. And basically, it's that thought of development paying its way, right? So we're gonna look at, we have to be compliant with statute, we have to be able to justify our nexus or the direct impact relative to a fee that we would charge development. And so that's what this study is going to do. When is there an opportunity to have, and what it would create is a fee schedule. If you're going to develop this type of development in this location with this amount of density, this is the fee that you will pay that goes into roads or emergency services or housing. But we're not sure if that's exactly the right model because it does have to go into a capital improvement. There are statutory requirements around how we can spend that money and how quickly we have to spend that money. So we're really gonna take a deep dive into, is that the right model or is there something else? But we definitely wanna look at the impact of development and making sure that they are concurrently paying their way, basically. So that's what this study is going to do and make sure that, we're always looking for additional resources around these particular areas. And so we just wanna be very mindful and good stewardship of making sure that we look at the impact from new development.
Who are we contracting with right now for this impact fee study on new developments?
It's, the company is Economic and Planning Systems Incorporated,
Okay, and
EPS.
it's basically like in their wheelhouse, it's what they do.
Yes,
Are
yes.
they taking input from like the surrounding communities and people who live nearby to get kind of like a weather vane on?
Absolutely.
It seems like we've just got a lot of controversial developments happening right now, and I'm concerned that people aren't feeling heard with, a lot of their grievances towards some of these developments.
And this is you're absolutely right, and I think that we'll talk a little more in detail about that coming up. This is really looking at the funding opportunity around the impact from development and offsetting those impacts. But there are lots of communities that have standard impact fees. And so they'll be looking at those, and EPS has done numerous of these similar types of studies. This is one of their specialties, and it may end up being that there should be, like Eagle County has a use tax on supplies. But we don't, and there's a balance. There's a balance that we don't want to have a negative impact on development, right? And we don't want to, we already know from our housing projects with an affordability lens what additional fees can do. So it really is a balance, but it's really designed at making sure that if there's an opportunity to realize revenue for these major components of our community, that we capture that. The Airport Industrial Park, so we're partnering with Economic Development and Adam with Ted to move the needle on the development plan for an area of the county owned land adjacent to the airport. So this has been going on and thought about in different iterations for decades. And so the previous board did fund both through TED and through CPD to do an in-depth master plan for the site to get it through an entitlement process. So that means looking at drainage and engineering and where to develop the site, what kind of environmental impacts there might be, what kind of wildlife impacts, so that it could go through the different stages of development and go through the entitlement process to be a shovel-ready project. So funding has been given for us to get through the entitlement phase of the Airport Industrial Park. We've known, and this is, I'll stay in the CPD lane, but there are some known elements that this is a strong economic driver for Lake County and the potential of, we lack good industrial land. We're siting it in the right location, but we don't have a lot of opportunities for contractor and trade operations, storage, manufacturing. So this is a real need within the community and also a revenue building opportunity for Lake County.
And could that be also residential hybrid units, or is that just industry?
We haven't been looking at housing in this area. We've been more in the industrial side of uses. I think that what we might suggest, and I don't want to get too off the topic, is that the county does own quite a bit of property that is probably more conducive for connectivity, more walkable, more close to more equitable as far as food access and connectivity. This is designed to that kind of thought, do we wanna create housing right by our airport overlay? I'm not sure, so housing hasn't been a part of it.
Thinking more of like a giant garage with a little apartment, those are getting really popular. So a plumber could have his guys live up there, or an artist could, or a mechanic or somebody have a place to live and a place to work.
I think a live worker, we can absolutely look through that lens as we develop this site. I think that's really valuable information. So maybe live work units versus kind of like new housing development, but more of a live work kind of situation. I think that'd be really great. Transportation mobility planning, super excited about this scope of work. So I don't know how much you know about it, but the study areas are Mountain View Village East and West, with Highway 24 dividing those communities with 360 unit owners. That's obviously a critical planning area. The Northern Corridor, this goes all the way from Gateway, which you may or may not know, that's a reference to a subdivision being one of the largest subdivision Lake County will ever process thus far, located at the junction of 91 and 24, is the Gateway proposed development. It's only been through sketch plan, but a preliminary plan, I believe, is on its way. And this particular area, the traffic impacts we're talking about roundabouts, also the roundabouts that CDOT are considering in that location. But it would go as far as Mountain View Drive, which we really have identified as kind of a pain point, an area in the community that we're all having some growing pains around that busiest intersection in the county. So really excited to have some study being going on right there. McQuethy Drive and Highway 24 at the Leadville Sand Plant not at the plant, at the office, the administrative office. And then investigating the feasibility of that bypass road. So we're really excited about the idea of taking that traffic outside of the downtown corridor. Most of our big haul truck routes are going through downtown, and we have more haul truck routes that you're gonna hear coming up that want to utilize that area. And so we are excited about the thought of a bypass road that would support the industrial park as well as haul truck routes and getting that out of our downtown area. So the study's gonna look at that.
Is that, do you think in Grand West, that road, or
Yeah, I think what
is
we've
that why
been,
Pete's in here every?
that probably, he would be very interested in this, discussion.
That'd be terrible for that neighborhood.
We do have to look at, areas that with the exception of Grand West, it is, taking, Highway 24 to 300 to 5A to 90 to 99, 99 being the Grand West. The most populated area is the Grand West, but the rest of that corridor or that route is not. There are some other areas that they looked at, like taking it through the east side, which that's pretty, problematic. There are several different areas so that they're looking for possible other routes. That's the one that CPD and Public Works kind of identified together. There are constraints to that as far as turning radiuses and construction of roads, so we're really gonna dive in, but you're absolutely right. There's gonna be an impact to a subdivision there, but it might be a route that might be a little less populated than some of our other alternatives. So it'll be having to kind of look at compromises in there potentially. The sign moratorium, we are currently in a sign moratorium. I know you all participated in that work session, so I think you all are pretty aware of that. And the good news is, I think we're gonna have a couple more meetings on that, but the moratorium doesn't expire until March. So I think that we got some good information from our work session and that we're on target for that. Here is our budget revenues. So we capture quite a bit of revenue from licensing and permits. And so you can see why depleting 75% of that is significant with a third-party vendor. The miscellaneous income that is up there is kind of a pass-through. So that miscellaneous income comes from approximately, I think around 86,000 of that is our rental income that come off of the Elm Street properties that are owned by the county. And then you'll see in our expenses that we then put that money right back into the maintenance and upkeep of those units. And charges for services are our land use, mine and Melissa and Cece's development review of those applications. And I think that kind of shows, it will tell you that our projections, a couple different things on this. One, our projections are being pretty modest because of labor costs, shortages of material costs, all the things that are impacting interest rates, everything that's impacting the development world. What we are tending to see that you'll start seeing in our building reports is that we're seeing less permits, but the cost of permits are higher. So what that means, we're seeing less local builds and more high-end custom builds. Has been the trend now for quite some time. Another thing to highlight on this, when in 2022 identified that we had not increased land use fees in over 20 years. And our building fees had not been looked at in well over 10. So we did a cost study and we now incrementally, instead of having to take some big 20-year gap in fees, we now annually are doing a slight, which ends up around, close to that 3% increase. Building permits are done on a national basis under a price index that's published by the ICC. So it's not just state, everybody's averaged in, and it's a national price index that drive building permits. And then our land use permits will now incrementally, annually update. We did have about a 30% increase, but we're only talking about like $100 permit went to $130. So it didn't feel, our land use fees are very, very low in comparison to a lot of, but every year now they're gonna incrementally get a little bit better. So we affected that change and we're starting to see better revenues coming in from both those applications. Okay, our expenditures. Our biggest expenditure this year is the commitment that the board made to housing. So that is approximately 1.4 of those other expenses is the support of the housing. So some of this though is captured both in the congressional spending dollars that we've taken in from grants and also the DOLA money that we took in from the IHOP grant and the Iowa grant, the IHOI grant. It is some of that. Then the next is personnel. This reflects the increase in the FTE for the building inspector and plan reviewer. But then you will see our professional services are going down significantly. So that's that cost savings in doing inspection and plan review in-house. So our professional services have decreased, and supplies and training just reflect that we have built up the team. So at one point, the department was down to 2 people, myself and Marla. And so pretty proud that we are sitting here today with a full team of, and you'll see our picture at the end, that we've really built out the department. So those are where our expenditures lie. And then the next slide really breaks down for you the impact of the building FTE versus the vendor. And so you can see just really quick, we did this before in 2024, before we'd gotten in all of our expenditures and revenues. So this is, these are a full year that you will see that we estimated the salary a bit high. I'm not sure this is the range that we would post this position in, but we just wanted to just put it out there for more of an executive position within the office. And then these are the expenses that we have paid Schooms over since 2021. And so here is the savings. We will still need to expend some of this. This is what we anticipate we would be saving, adding that FTE. Now, we will need to utilize some of that, not even half of that, when at times we need to add some capacity for plan review. But our forecast is that we're going to, if I could have figured out how to get rid of the 2024, but the spreadsheet was locked by Will and I couldn't get in touch with him in time to take out the 2024, because I wish that showed what it looked like at the end of the year, but we weren't able to add those numbers in. But that is our forecast, is that we would be saving around, had we gone to this model in 2024, there was an opportunity to save around that $145,000. So we really consider that as kind of leakage, and we really think that we are attracting really great applicants. The GIS position, we had, we're getting ready to do interviews, but I would say we have 49 qualified individuals. So I'm really thinking that we're gonna be able to attract either that, or the best fit we think is bringing somebody that's ready to come out of the field, that's been a local general contractor and ready to go into inspection. That would be a real fit. So we've been putting that information out to the industry and hope that when we start posting the position, we get some really great interest. Next slide. Department goals. we're here to support all things, housing. So the housing at 10-2, we wanna help with the completion of all work that's scheduled in 2025. Support all housing initiatives through the utilization of the planning grant. Didn't really talk about that, but we were also awarded the planning capacity grant. That is going to pay for a learning session on public-private partnerships that's coming up for you with Michael Yerman. You're going to start having some development that's gonna come knocking at the door and ask for participation in those kind of partnerships so that they can leverage state and federal funds to bring in affordable housing. So private industry, we do have development that is interested in helping us with our community housing needs, but they will be coming in and asking for support to leverage the funds that are out there and available for this type of housing. So through the planning capacity grant, we're able to do, when we have an affordable project come in, we can utilize funds from that to do an expedited plan review. We can also use it for anything that aids us in any of our housing initiatives. So really excited that we were awarded the planning capacity grants. In-house customer service quality by reducing timelines and increase efficiencies through process reviews. We are in the process, it's taking us a bit of time, but we are committed to getting our cloud permit, digital software for the building side of the department. We've also already utilizing it in code enforcement. It will also help with our short-term rental processing, but we really are also increasing capacity in the department, obviously, is aiding us in reaching those customer service quality goals that we really want to be providing the best service possible to the community. Process priority code amendments, we're going to be talking to you about these tonight, so I'm not going to talk about them. Our goal is to champion the One Community Project. Super excited about this. We're doing an engagement like we've never done it before. We are really have a goal of leaving no one behind. It is a robust, inclusive public engagement. We're gonna talk to you more about it and explain what that means and what we've done. Review and consider the next building code adoption. Attract and onboard that building professional we've been talking about, and then our goal is to be fully staffed. We're getting ready to interview for our GIS position, and like I said, we've got some great candidates. Our long range is just support economic development by bringing in the planning expertise and insight on those county projects and projects. At the end of our comp plan, we will be implementing some of the recommendations that came out of that comp plan. Full digitalization of the department eventually, and then succession planning. And I think I went way over 10, I'm so sorry.
Alright, department.
And there we are, except for Marla. I'm so sad to say Marla is not in our picture. But I think you all know who she is, and then this is just our organizational structure. We have Melissa and Jackie here, CC Williams is our planner one, Marla Bond is our permit tech and office manager of the building side, Michaela Frosto is our permit tech, enforcement is Don Helmick, mapping is that open position, and David Wilson just left with environmental health specialist, but we are going to be using a third-party engineering firm just in the interim until we figure out that position. So that's what the department looks like to date, and of course then we'll add on that building inspector to that, and that's all we have.
Whew,
Well done, Ann.
that's a big one. Thank you.
Andy, do you wanna get their questions?
Oh, do you want me to answer any questions?
That's up to
It's
the
up
board.
to Andy.
Yeah, let's go ahead and touch on these questions,
Okay, that's just fine.
please and thank you.
Absolutely, so the first one, we have been, there are zones within Lake County that have been urban residential since 1970, when we adopted zoning. So that is a zoning district that has been here since the 76, I'm so sorry. We adopted zoning in 1976. Urban residential is not new, it has always been that, and it is a moderate residential zoning. moderate density. So it's never been rural, that never changed, that's not,
Those are
So I think
questions for the board.
losing what's left of the parks over there in
okay,
Harrison Field,
yeah, so I'm happy to talk about that.
sure.
Community agreements are being, we don't want to lose our parks for purple health. Okay, so I don't know, there's been a couple different opportunities to go to a design charrette on the Harrison Park property, but I believe that all of those have included what public amenity and services should be included. And so the Harrison Park setting or location has always been part of the discussion for public recreation as part of, and I would tell you that in planning a healthy, vibrant community, parks and connectivity and open space is all part of that. You're not going to plan a vibrant master plan without thinking of those components. And I know that the SC group has included that within the design elements of their conversations. And so I do believe that when options of what that could look like would encompass both. So we would, as planners, Melissa and I both would definitely support any master planning to incorporate those elements. Our code requires open space as part of any consideration of any type of site design for major subdivision or planned unit development. Do you wanna add anything?
Yeah, so I think that answers a bit of the, won't we need more parks if we fill this to capacity? It won't be filled to capacity. Part of the value of density is that you can consolidate and leave more open space. And I think you'll see that in some of those plans. I assume y'all are pretty familiar with the Harrison Park project, but we can certainly answer more specific questions that you might have from your constituents.
Absolutely, yeah, happy to do that. Or
Great.
I do know that there'll be, housing will be talking about it too, when they present, your housing projects that are underway. But great comment, from the public too. We want, we're looking, that's what this, process is designed to do, is to, look at, what the community input is through the process. So it's meant to be a full engagement process, and things like preservation of tree groves. Absolutely, I don't think anybody from a planning standpoint doesn't see the benefit of consideration of those kind of things.
Great.
And can you just give us a little update, especially for Mel, so that people know when is the next time that the public is really gonna have an opportunity to give input or engage with the
So there's a
department?
survey that's out there right now through the SE group that's being offered to the community. We just had public engagement at the library. That was on
22nd.
the 22nd. We had a morning and an evening session. We had a session 2 months ago as well. So right now the survey would be the next best
Awesome.
way to get your opinion heard.
How do folks find that survey?
Tim, would you put it in the chat?
Yes, and community members can always come and meet with staff, which Mel has done.
Great, yeah, so we encourage, we've been lucky to have in-person it was over the phone, it was in person for Jackie, I was on the phone. Conversations with members of the community that would like more information, and those opportunities are always available.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
And can I forward you the survey? Can you post it?
You just did it.
Yeah.
The link?
Ready to, the next acronym?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jan, thank you, Melissa,
Thanks,
thank you,
man.
Jackie.
Alright, time for some TED Talks.
TED Talk, that's right. I'm gonna legally change my name to Ted, so it's just easier. Katie, why don't you? Right, in the interest of time, for those of you, I also was on my tourism panel, so, we know each other, but for Andy and Matt, I'll just give you a tiny bit of background about myself. I was born in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and born into a resort, seasonal resort community hospitality world. I was literally born in a motel and was changing sheets at 3 years old at the hotels, and have worked at every position of hospitality and restaurants and things like that as a night auditor and janitor and manager and things like that. So I'm very familiar with seasonality and the tourism industry. Majority of the properties that I worked on were in a small town called Lincoln, New Hampshire, not dissimilar to Leadville. And a lot of the growing pains and sort of that was a mill town that went through sort of a post-industrial, who are we gonna be when we grow up? And tourism was one of the pillars that the community sort of chose and focused on. So I then was a traveling filmmaker for 15 years, working in travel documentary filmmaking, having to do with hospitality and showing people the world. And then moved up to Leadville when having kids, and the timing worked out that I was absolutely never wanted to get on an airplane again, right around the time that the tourism panel in March of 2022 we're looking for staff. If you'll remember, we had a global pandemic, and there was, in 2020, everyone was quarantined, and then in 2021, everyone was desperate to get out of their house. And in Lake County, we experienced a 46% increase in direct spend because people really wanted to get outside, and you could come to a community like Lake County, get outside and rent a house and feel like you had your own space, but also get outside. So that really inspired the tourism panel to want to have staff, because at the time, one of the major things was just trying to control the situation, and tourism management was kind of a big issue. So when I was brought on, a lot of it was trying to understand how we control this growth. You know, as the world does, the world has kind of returned back to its natural circadian rhythm, and if you look at the direct spend on travel stats, which was provided by the state, we're back at that 3% growth curve that we were on before COVID, and actually a little bit below it. And one of the major drivers of that is our loss of lodging accommodations. Over the last 2 years, we've lost 30% of our lodging accommodations with the loss of the Silver King Inn and Suites. That was a 66-room property. And then as well, AirDNA, which is a tool that basically allows you to see all of the VRBO and Airbnb listings. They track data back to 2019, and if you looked in 2020, 2021 in particular, going into 22, you could see anywhere between 500 and 550 listings on Airbnb and VRBO. And now, if you go to those sites, you will see about 320 listings. So that is a testament to our short-term rental programs and our licensing programs being effective in Leadville as well as Lake County. But it also speaks to the fact that folks who were short-term renting without a license are now not doing it, and therefore the income associated with those rental units has now evaporated. So that's just trying to set the stage a little bit for the conversation that we're gonna have today about tourism and economic development, because they're closely tied. I'd love to introduce Katie Hild. She's on my staff, and those of you that don't know Katie, I'll let her introduce herself.
Sure, yeah, I was born and raised in Denver. I've lived in Leadville now for 5 years. I came up initially just for the outdoors. Up until May of this year, I worked winters at Ski Cooper. I was the base area services manager, but mainly just ran the ski school call office and center. And then I worked part-time. It was a very complicated relationship with the tourism panel, but I actually worked under the chamber to run the visitor center. And as of May of this year, I'm now full-time with the county, working directly under Adam. I'm still running the visitor center, but also helping out with more of the marketing and the behind-the-scenes tourism pieces.
And, you know, happy to get into any of those details that you all want around, the chamber, especially now that we are, separate. But at the end of the day, we used to operate the visitor center out of the Chamber of Commerce building, technically LCCA building, but a 100-year lease with the Chamber of Commerce to operate, because the Chamber of Commerce used to operate the visitor center for years, and through COVID, it became a strain on the Chamber of Commerce ability. They just felt as if they did not have capacity to run and operate the visitor center. So they came to the tourism panel and gave them 6 days to either operate and take on responsibility of the visitor center, or it would just be closed and we wouldn't have a visitor center. So the tourism panel took it on as their responsibility, and basically what the tourism panel used to do is essentially have between $50,000 and $60,000 of our operating budget was allocated to the Chamber of Commerce so that the Chamber of Commerce staff could operate the visitor center under the tourism panel's direction. So it was a convoluted but had to come together quickly solution during COVID that sort of drug along a bit until finally in 2024 we were able to come to some agreements with the Chamber of Commerce that we would be taking on full-time operations of the visitor center and visitor center staff, and kind of be able to create our own destiny, so to speak. And with that, we took it as an opportunity to also unburden ourselves from the financial relationship we had with the Chamber of Commerce, because for all intents and purposes, our money was helping to keep the Chamber of Commerce operating as a 501c3 or 501c6, and it was allowing them to kind of file their quarterly taxes and kind of keep them afloat without actually going after memberships. And unfortunately, that was not good for us. We had an issue where somebody actually fell in the parking lot at the visitor center, and because one of the railings failed on the deck, and questions became about whose liability, whose problem is this? And it's not technically the Chamber of Commerce because they're not really functioning. It's not really the tourism panel because it's not our building. It was a bit of a mess. So it was a really good opportunity for us to explore if that space was the best fit for us, and if we were actually serving our visitors in the best way. And I was able to enter into conversations with Climax about our public-private partnership for the old bank building. So and that came together very quickly. From March until July, we worked through the details, and then in August, we moved into our new visitor center over there as a public-private partnership with Climax. So in that time, around that same time, we had conversations between the Board of County Commissioners and the tourism panel and myself around sort of expanding my role and expanding our department's responsibility now that we have staff capacity, with Katie being, no longer employed by the Chamber of Commerce and now working under the tourism panel's purview to be able to create the Office of Tourism and Economic Development. In the 3 years that I have been working in this community, I have been the one consistent director level position that's been able to help any of our small business owners. I have seen a number of staff people come and go at the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street, and the Economic Development Corporation, which I am a board member of. So I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, and in order to provide consistent support to all of our small businesses, as well as think big picture on economic development and help the county with all of our county-focused projects that we have that revolve around economic development, it just became a very clear path forward to create the Tourism and Economic Development Department, so that we could have consistent, stable access to, if nothing else, leadership and human capital and capacity building and all of the things that our businesses desperately need and usually can't find answers to. I'm sure all of you at some point or another have worked as a business owner or worked in businesses in Lake County. And I don't think that any of you would easily say that it's a smooth process and that it's a very easy to navigate system. So I think trying to create capacity and trying to be that sort of person who can help and be an advocate for is something that I have always felt in my 3 years has been missing. So really excited to be able to expand that and work on the complexity of issues that we have, everything from the airport industrial park, all of our special district partners that have, you know, a variety of issues, legacy issues surrounding sanitation specifically. But you know, I often think about economic development as community development, and in a small community like ours, we need to be able to add capacity to one another, and being able to work with CPD and work with the airport and work with the EDC and work with SBDC and work with Main Street and work with the Chamber of Commerce to help build themselves back up has been one of the most valuable things that I now have the capacity to do through the work that we've done with TED. And yeah, I mean, you know, all of these, even the airport industrial park, we've been talking a lot recently about sweat equity. So much of these projects require so much sweat equity because we don't have resources to just throw at how do we take this idea that's been floated around since 1998, how do we get it through entitlement, and how do we actually get things off the ground. So that's a bit of the history. We'll go to the next slide. So in terms of next steps for our department, you know, we're really invested in working on our relationship with community planning and development. At the end of the day, you know, being able to be a referral agency, but also being able to mostly work with CPD and understand their needs, their pain points, and how we're going to be able to communicate out to potential you know, developers or business owners or anyone that's interested in Lake County. We need consistent messaging, and we need to sort of build that trust and build that foundation. So that's a lot of what I've been working on. And the comprehensive planning effort, you know, the One Community Project, I think is such a huge opportunity for us. As mentioned, you know, 1860 to now, for all intents and purposes, mining is the backbone of our economy and our revenue. And as we think about diversification and as we think about the role of tourism and economic development outside of mining in our community, as well as thinking about mining, I think it's super important for us to grab this opportunity to work with community builders and with the city and with the county together. And so being able to just work through this process and, you know, cheerlead them through CPD through this project and the city as well. I think it's a really exciting time to be doing this work. And at the end of the day, you know, as we all know, there's a lot of ground truthing that needs to happen in Leadville. So if things are not grassroots, if they're not sustained over a long term, if they don't actually have some sort of plan around cost recovery, that the shiny object syndrome can become very real in Lake County, and that's how things can fall apart. So really interested in sort of consistently validating things against real world conditions and against how we actually, where rubber meets the road. And as I mentioned, you know, in Lake County, economic development is community development, so. And this is just an overview. You know, I read it every night before I go to bed, so I suggest you guys do as well, but this is just our sort of mission statement in terms of how we work within the county and CPD and Parks and Rec and open space to help our local organizations, businesses, and nonprofits drive holistic economic growth. Turns out if you don't have housing or childcare, you can't really attract new business. So The Lake County Tourism Panel, our job is to strategically invest lodging tax revenue that's designated to increase local income through tourism, fostering sustainable growth that supports current and future generations. We will get a little bit into sort of how our funding works, but for those of you who are not familiar, we are funded, the tourism panel is funded through 1.9% lodging tax that's collected through everyone that stays in the county, and then a 1.92% accommodations tax that's collected by the city of Leadville through muni regs, through the systems they have in place to collect the accommodations tax, that 5% accommodations tax that they have currently. That money at 1.92% flows back to the tourism panel to do the work we do. And regarding the economic development side, we act as a capacity builder and an owner's representative for Lake County government in matters of economic growth. And then again, sort of more of our future statement is with steadfast commitment to community-driven growth, TAG envisions a future where Lake County thrives as a dynamic destination enriching the lives of residents, businesses, and visitors alike. Our short-term goals, we currently have a subscription to Placer AI, which allows us to do pretty in-depth demographic, psychographic, real-time understanding of how businesses are doing in Lake County. And we can really understand, number one, how we can best support local businesses and try and see trends, both positive and negative, and be able to send reports to the Chamber of Commerce, to Main Street, to the EDC to say, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is what we should be aware of. This seems like a very positive thing. We can do point in time, so we can say, hey, on that Saturday of ski joring, this is where everyone went. Hey, when Lifetime puts on an event, here is where people are actually going afterwards. We can see spillage, so we can understand where people are staying during and after events. So it's a very robust tool. And we're starting to put together sort of like monthly reports that we want to be able to share out with anyone that's interested. And our number one goal from a tourism standpoint is to boost visitation during our ski season, our key seasons, which are really off-peak at the end of the day. I'm happy to share the data around visitation, but from about the beginning of June to mid-September, we do great. I'm sure you all know it. We all know about traffic on Harrison Avenue, some of which is that trucking traffic, by the way. But at the end of the day, our winter does not actually see much of a spike at all. And that is a missed opportunity for us. We have such a huge opportunity to do a much better job of increasing visitation in the winter, as well as working with our local partners to understand how we stretch out those tails, right? We're not necessarily gonna bring people here in May. It's hard, again, until we can activate a space like the Tabor year-round for amazing world-class performances. It's hard to draw people here in that true mud season when many business owners wanna take a break and when the trails are not conducive to travel. So, but there's a ton of opportunity for us, and we're working a lot with the Colorado Tourism Office. We've leveraged a ton of funding to be able to really understand and come up with robust plans of how we grow. Everything from, our access to Nordic, all of the access we have to outdoor amenities, building a much stronger relationship with Ski Cooper, working on building a much stronger marketing relationship with Copper so that they can help push us as well as we can push them. Because there are quite a few folks who come up to Ski Copper that stay in Lake County, so. Build staff capacity for shared county projects, airport, traffic work, infrastructure, as I mentioned. Champion the expanded transit services. I worked pretty closely with Tim and other folks to bring the weekend ski shuttle, make that possible here this winter, and I'm currently crusading the ability to have that shuttle run, the downtowner shuttle run to Twin Lakes in the weekends during the summer. So there's just so much value to be able to bring residents down to Twin Lakes as well as visitors. And if you give people an opportunity with a free shuttle, I have Twin Lakes business owners quite frequently telling me that they do not see enough locals that are coming down to Twin Lakes and sort of spending money and recreating. So that's something I'm really focused on is not forgetting our Twin Lakes neighbors and not, working on changing the sign to get it to say Independence Pass is closed and Twin Lakes is open. I didn't think that would be as complicated as it was, but just trying to bring awareness to all parts of the county. And then the one community project, as we mentioned, and then transforming the new visitor center into a vibrant community hub. When we did make the agreement for that space with Climax, they did renovate the entire space into this beautiful, much more welcoming visitor experience, but also we made everything in the space be temporary, so it could all be moved out of the way so that we can host events there. And we have hosted Senator Hickenlooper, Representative Pedersen, as well as a number of community events. We're having an avalanche awareness event there on February 3rd, so come out for that. That's with Friends of Berthoud Pass is putting that on. We do get requests from state agencies who, due to sunshine laws and other reasons, they can't actually pay for a space, but they need a space to be able to host meetings about compliance and about public health issues. So having a space to offer for that sort of thing has been a huge benefit for us.
What is the maximum capacity in that space?
Yeah, comfortably, 35 feels really nice, and if it's a standing event, it's like a 50-60 event, but it doesn't replace, like a freight, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Which again, for us, feels great. It's sort of intentional because freight has a huge community focus and they wanna make their space available when possible for nonprofits when it does get to that 100, 200 person range. So for us, it's okay, we have this group that the senator wants to pull together, that type of thing.
Do we pay rent? I thought.
We do, yep, we pay $1,000 a month, and again, that's part of the public-private partnership was.
And they have a recruiting office in there, is that right?
They do, Fatima is in there 2 days a week, and she uses it as a place to talk to potential employees that want more information about Climax. And she's also there answering a lot of questions about Climax and about mining. So having an in-house expert has been really great for us.
And she partners with the information, like she's sitting at the visitors desk right now while we do that, so obviously we're kind of more the experts, I have a 2-person staff, but just trying to have that familiarity between Climax and us, and that it works in their benefit because the more they understand Leadville, the easier it is for them to recruit and have information about the town. And then for us, that's one of our number one questions is what is that thing I just drove past as I'm coming up here, and tell me more about it, so, yeah.
Yeah, and part of the partnership was that heavily reduced below market rate, because that partnership does include it's $1,000 all in, so they pay for utilities and internet and kind of everything, so.
That's one of the best spaces we have.
That is one of the nicest spaces on Harrison Avenue and Leadville in general.
Yeah,
And market rate was gonna be for
$4,500,
$4,500
yeah,
a month,
yeah.
so we got a great deal.
Yeah, and that was part of the consideration is trying to understand what type of business we'd be able to attract for $4,500 a month. There's not a business in Lake County that's paying that rent.
It doesn't exist.
Maybe if there was an Aspen tenant that wanted to hop over, but. So long-term goals, act as the owner's representative and capacity builder for Lake County government. And especially as we move through the comp plan and we identify things that we need to prioritize. Improve visitor services by equipping local frontline workers and with destination knowledge and training. We're currently working on coming up with sort of small business owners have expressed the need for understanding marketing better, things like social media, how they could actually have small wins for their business and stay a little bit more 2025 with a updating their menus, updating their hours, things like that. So providing training, we can do that through our office. Support a thoughtfully designed commercial lodging facility that aligns with our character. As I mentioned, we've lost over 30% of our lodging in 2 years, so has a big impact on sort of sales tax and direct spend generation overall, and it has a direct impact on our lodging tax revenue.
Do you foresee that trend continuing, like in 2 years, 30%, that's a big jump or a big drop? Like,
Do I see it continuing?
yeah, do you see it?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think that I don't anticipate us losing any more, for instance, short-term rental capacity unless the licenses were to continue to be restricted further, like within the city, for instance, or within the county. And then in terms of the commercial side of things, there's always a chance that, for instance, the owners of the Delaware could decide to sell, and a future owner could decide to leverage those units as studios or apartments, especially because they're taxed at such a lower rate. That was a big heartburn point for the new owners of the Delaware, is that they were not, I don't think that they had fully put together what their tax bill was gonna look like, because all those rooms are taxed commercially. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I could very easily foresee them selling that, and that for a future owner seeing a lot more profit and a lot less heartache out of turning those hotel rooms into studios.
Do you think there's any validity to the some of the headline stories about VRBO and Airbnb stuff just kind of tanking, that whole market's dropping
100%.
through the floor, people are getting out?
Definitely, and we've already, but that's already happened here. So like, for instance, a good way to think about this is in the Vail Valley, they have 4,300 purpose-built short-term rental units. So they were built by investors going after that dime, especially knowing the fact that you get taxed at such a lower rate. So they went after and built those, and they're professionally managed by management companies. So whenever there is a lot of sort of pushback or outcry around that industry, it's having major impacts on that industry. But what it will first affect is those purpose-built units, and then the next person to get pushed out are, and I've had conversations with High Rocky Homes, so I don't feel like I'm speaking out of turn when I talked to Nadeem, which is now Traverse Hospitality. Nadeem expressed that their company and their investment group is turning away from the short-term rental industry, because anyone that owns like 20 to 40 to 50 units, you put yourself at great risk, given all the dynamics of the housing market and the real estate market. So they are sort of focusing their money on other endeavors, including things like a condo-tel model, things where you can actually pre-sell the units, but then they can go into a key program so that they can actually be used as hotel rooms, but they're owned by individuals and investors that can make their money that way, and it's a more stable product than something like short-term rentals. So yes, we're already seeing those impacts on the short-term rental markets, but a community like ours is pretty unique because some of that purchasing was done by speculative investors or humans that were just like, great, this short-term rental situation will help me offset the cost of this mortgage. And yes, those are some of the people who have been vocal in their disapproval of the short-term rental licensing program is, hey, I made this purchase thinking that that was gonna be part of my plan. But again, that, in terms of how that affects us on the bigger picture level, it won't necessarily. And so I don't, as long as we can keep doing our job of driving demand and we're not actually losing market share, because that's the big thing is our market share, because we have so little revenue to work with, our total budget is less than $300,000. When the Rockies Playground sees 6% less visitation, Rockies Playground is like Summit County, Vail Valley, our whole area. When they see 6% less visitation, Breckenridge can go, amazing, I have a $1.2 $2 million marketing budget, let's really ramp up the marketing dollars and we can fill in that gap by getting eyes on it. Whereas we lose out quickest because we don't have the marketing money, the marketing firepower to throw at it. So even though the whole area is going down, we have the potential to lose much more market share because we're so much smaller. And our ability to compete is so much smaller. So,
Cause we're not putting billboards up on I-70 telling people to come here,
yeah,
shred the gnar.
yeah, cause we can't afford that. So, so it makes for some really interesting dynamics in terms of like, there really are very little ways that I can grow my revenue. But I'm the most concerned about being fiscally responsible but at the same time, leverage every darn penny I have through sweat equity and relationships and PR. Earned media is like a huge win for us. We've done a lot with earned media. And the traffic on Harrison Avenue through Placer AI, I can see that more people are coming to visit Lake County, so there's more notoriety around Lake County, Leadville, but they're not staying. The average dwell time is 93 minutes, so they're not staying in Lake County because there's nowhere for them to stay. So our spillage is huge. And then, achieve a 3% increase in off-peak visitation by 2027. I think a lot of the stuff we're doing now is really helping us get set up for that. And collaborate, closely with the URA to drive significant revenue growth for our URA district over the next 4 to 7 years. I was appointed by the county to our LoRa board in November, and then in January, they appointed me, they voluntold me into the chair position. And if you read between the lines on that one, what that really means is that, the most shovel-ready area that could accept something like a 92-room Fairfield Inn and Suites is the rail yard. And that, having a flagged property, through the lodging feasibility study that I commissioned in 22 and was finished in 23, it showcased that 70% of all 70% of all people that stay at a hotel make their purchasing decision based on brand loyalty. So without a Marriott in this town, though our occupancy rates are mid-40s, the reason for that is because the Roadway Inn is not brand loyalty. A Marriott is brand loyalty. That's how folks can use their points. So at the end of the day, until we have a flagged property, we're never gonna see anything north of 60 in terms of occupancy, because that's just not where people who are interested in that type of product, we don't have anything to offer them. So that's why some of why we experience the spillage we experience.
Adam, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the hotels are at a 40% occupancy rate?
Yeah,
Is that annually or?
Annual, yeah.
So that's amortized over the whole year?
Yes,
In the
sir.
summer, they're probably 95.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that's very common for seasonal places. Cape Cod, it was pretty common to have like 60%. But in a place like Lincoln, New Hampshire, which again is very analogous to this, average occupancy is 80%. And the reason for that is that your summer and your winter are equally marketed and have equal amounts of consistent products. And so where we're kind of missing the mark is we concentrate a lot of our, having our visitation so concentrated to June to September is a problem, but then also how we spread people out throughout the county is a problem. I think that again, not to get ahead of myself, but there will be opportunities for us to talk about additional summer offerings, additional summer products that we're not taking advantage of, and we could be in pretty short order. Well, everything's complicated, but places like Ski Cooper having year-round operation plans. Just as an anecdotal piece of this, Pollard Brook, one of the hotels that I managed, I was the general manager of it when my occupancy rate was 72% annually. And the year that Loon Mountain opened up mountain biking and a summer luge, one of those, like you sit on the seat and do that. The year that they opened that, what's that?
Alpine slide.
Alpine slide. The year they opened that, our occupancy jumped to 92% annually, and I didn't do a thing. We didn't renovate a room, we didn't change our marketing strategy. It's just that there were more people now in the summer than ever before. And again, we're at the base of Loon Mountain, location is everything, but there are opportunities that we could be taking advantage of, so. And then the other thing just to mention is that embed sustainable tourism practices. I am on a number of state and local and regional boards, including the Colorado Destination Stewardship Initiative. And I think that being involved with on a state board and a state agency, it really keeps sort of our community and our name front and center with the state, and sort of allows us to be involved in planning on how we think about tourism moving forward and how we kind of make Leadville relevant rather than, I'm not blaming Chris Romer, but pretty much whenever anyone thinks about the Rockies playground from the state, from OEDIT's perspective, they contact Chris Romer. He's the first contact, always. And that has shifted a bit, cause I'm the new kid at the block, so.
What's the difference between tourism and responsible tourism?
Good question.
About your bags.
Yeah. I think the easiest way to talk about that is that the average person, when they go on vacation, uses 40% more water than they do at home. Why do you think that is? Because they're on vacation, and it's not their resource. They're not paying the bills, and they're on vacation. Their job is to let their responsibilities and cares go, and to be sort of in this place of, I don't have to be responsible. I'm too darn responsible 300 days out of the year. These are my 6 days to not be responsible. So responsible tourism is trying to have people understand that if you come to a small community that is struggling with workforce and they tell you it's gonna be an hour till you have dinner, you could either choose to freak out or you could choose to recognize that if you slow down and you take your name down and go for a nice walk through town, that it's a win-win, because you're actually being more responsible and more respectful for this small community that's trying to deal with a massive influx. And again, if you look at the chart, when you have 15,000 people on Harrison Avenue in July on a Tuesday, and you have 150 people in January on a Tuesday on the same street, that it's going to have a massive impact on that community. So resources, human capital, kind of all the things. Responsible tourism is focused on sense of place and like sort of a protecting sense of place. So if we have people going up on the east side and crawling all over historic mining structures because they think it's cool, they are injuring our sense of place.
So you're talking about educating them, lecturing them, giving them, when they check in, they have to go through a checklist and.
Yeah, so we have the Do Leadville Twin Lakes Right campaign, that's one example. We have a number of examples, but one of them is the Do Leadville Twin Lakes Right. So the state started something called Do Colorado Right. So when someone lands at DIA, literally from the moment they get off the plane, they're hit with messaging about how, like just expectations around how we deal with things like water, and how we deal with things like trash, and how we deal with things like traffic. And when they get in the train to take them to their bags, they're hit with more messaging. When they rent a car, there's messaging there. When they're driving up, the buses have messaging on them. And then when they get to Lake County, it switches from Do Colorado Right to Do Leadville Twin Lakes Right. And we have messaging kind of all over the place. We have messaging in the paper. We have what we call good neighbor guides that the CPD and the city of Leadville give out to short-term rental owners to be able to put in their short-term rentals. We put them in all the businesses. We have these tags, backpack tags that people can take with them when they're going to hike Mount Elbert. We actually have a trail ambassador program where we're at busy trailheads talking to people about Do Leadville Twin Lakes Right and our tenants. There's 8 of them. And we have long form versions and then short form versions that sort of get to the point quickly. And we're engaging with them in conversation all the time about these types of topics.
A big difference that, we see in the visitor center is there's people that just don't care. There are always gonna be those jerks that don't care what they come and do to your environment. But there's a lot of people that just don't understand, especially the mining background and kind of the hazards and risks you could have with that. Like we have the sinkhole that developed up near the Little Johnny mine, like we have a picture of that on display to understand, there's risks of doing this. Septic, honestly, the amount of times we talk about just waste and poop, but we have a whole display on what are the different ways that you should be disposing of your human waste.
Campfires.
Yeah, campfires, and our county is very different from others that, when we only have one dump site that isn't private, like they've got one at Sugarloaf, but if you're not staying at Sugarloaf and you need to go to ours. Same with water, there's not a lot of water access, a lot of the campgrounds haven't had water, so having those conversations. Trash, people don't understand how expensive, especially in Twin Lakes, it is to get their garbage out of there, and so they don't want just campers using their public dumpsters for that. So a lot of the conversations is just a lack of understanding, and so by catching them, hopefully in the visitor center or through these guides, we're getting those people that do care and do wanna make a difference, as well as just partnerships with a lot of the, there's a lot of groups that come in and do tourist activities, but also give back. And so we try and partner with those.
Yeah, we have two groups, and many of them partner with Friends of Lake County. Friends of Lake County is an organization that I created when I started this job because of the amount of public feedback I received from people saying like, Turquoise Lake, there's trash around Turquoise Lake. I can't believe that people would not put out their fire rings, and I'm just a big person that it's like, if you have a problem, you could complain about it or you could do something. So I created Friends of Lake County, and we use that as our volunteer arm. We work with the Forest Service to dismantle fire rings, pick up human waste, pick up trash, and we logged over 170 hours last year of volunteer time through community members and visitors. We have this program called Leadville Camp and Run, and it's sponsored by Runners for Public Lands. They bring in tourists from around the country who wanna come here, wanna run like the 100 course, for instance, and they volunteer their time. So they volunteer with C4, they volunteer with Friends of Lake County, and they're doing trail cleanups and fire ring cleanups. And yeah, if you haven't been into the visitor center, I would suggest stopping by. We have a portable toilet set up, and we ask people, what's your poop plan? We ask people, what's your fire plan? We have a propane powered gas ring set up, and we talk to people about, do you need a campfire? If you do, are you familiar with these? We sell wag bags, we sell trash bags at our visitor center, and a wag bag is basically a way to dispose of human waste when you're up in the Alpine. And we, like I said, that engagement of people at the trailhead seems to be a really effective way to ask them, do you have a map downloaded on your phone, offline? Do you have water? Do you have layers? Cause again,
Search and rescue appreciates that.
80% of search and rescue calls from people, 80% of search and rescue calls in the summer come from people who are unprepared and trying to hike Mount Elbert specifically. So we spent about 7 months through the Colorado Tourism Office engaging with the community with search and rescue and a variety of organizations to understand the key pain points, and then distilling that down to these tenets that we created. And again, you could call it, sort of like a checklist. We did have something called the Adventure by Nature Pledge, but no one's gonna fill that out. So it's just about constant reinforcement of messaging. People need to see things 14 times before they pay attention to it. So the more consistent we are, the more we're gonna be able to have an impact on those missing, those people who wanna do the right things but don't have access to information.
Gotcha. Let's, in the interest of time, let's keep moving forward
Yeah.
and let's start looking at budget stuff here.
Totally. So again, revenue, when I first started, as I mentioned, we were looking at revenue of around $400,000. Now we're basically, in the 300. And, I think at the end of the day, the hope is that we can get to 316 by 2028. The more we work on creating new commercial lodging, creating new, areas for people to camp, areas for kind of all the opportunities for us to grow. Even the 10th mountain huts, if you weren't aware, those contribute to lodging tax. So, And then in terms of expenses, when you look at other expenses for '24, the reason why that category is there is because the way that the finance department has traditionally categorized our department, because we're not like a normal county department, we have a much more robust way of breaking out all of our expenses, but they basically just put most of our expenses into other expenses. This is things like it's like everything under the sun. It was like
Includes all the visitor center stuff.
yeah, all the visitor center stuff. It includes a lot of our promotions, a lot of our PR, whenever we have trips with our folks like reporters, things like that. A lot of our expenses around working on the website, things like that. It all gets lumped into there. But moving forward, we've been able to work with them on sort of like fitting them and recategorizing things, and we really hope to continue to improve the coding because we have not had a lot of consistency of experience in terms of finance directors over the 3 years I've been doing this. So trying to just work with finance to finally allow that coding to make more sense, to put it lightly. But as you can see here, the long and short of it is that we are drastically cutting most of our expenses, and the majority of how we're doing that is through professional services and just our reliance on others. Katie and I are just taking a lot more stuff in-house, so. Yep, feel good. Again, just more aspirational stuff, but yeah, in the interest of time, I think that's all I have for you. And if you go to the next slide, on this presentation, oh no, wait, it's out there, okay, but yeah, it's all good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions for us?
Not at the moment.
I'd like to hear more about that hotel you were talking.
Yeah.
And then I'd just like to express again, Nordic skiing is a great way to bring
That's right.
people in. They got a lot
That's
of money, they get super hungry.
Yep.
And we got, the best snow because there's no significant melting generally, like there is in Frisco
That's right.
or other places, so.
For sure.
That's
I'm
my-
really trying to work with Jane to really get some of that messaging out, even since last week's community coffee, she came up with a flyer for me that I can put out at the visitor center that goes directly to those grooming reports, that the county's doing and that piece, so.
Yeah,
We're
for,
trying to lean hard into that this year.
What about snowmobiling, ski-mo?
Yep.
Winter biking is huge, and more grooming helps with the user conflicts.
yep, yeah, I think for us, I think the thing I'll put in your ear, is that, I can market Lake County all day long, but what I need is consistent products. Consistent products
I hear you.
that I can put my name behind.
Mhm.
Because there have been a number of incidences in the last 2 years where Katie and I have promoted things that made us look like the fool.
Yeah, come on up and ski on a Saturday and there's 2 feet of snow in the middle belt, something like that.
Yeah, and I think I feel very confident that by next year, like, we will have a lot of these things dialed, but when it comes to like, I know it's a very, very Herculean effort, but just trying to make sure that grooming specifically, especially for Nordic, I mean, at the end of the day, we can push the heck out of, and we do push the heck out of Tennessee Pass Nordic Center, because that's an excruciatingly consistent product.
Yes, it is.
But when we talk about the Mineral Belt Trail, we talk about the golf course, we talk about CMC, we need like consistency,
Okay.
because that is what the Nordic community demands.
Our goals are the same.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Adam, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm gonna be so quick.
Are you
I'm good, no, I'm not.
I've been speaking to us before. When people come. Cause you're Josh Adams.
Yeah, my last name that happens that often.
Yeah.
Usually you roll with it.
Yeah.
Team at the restaurant as well.
Thank
You're not gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Thank you for removing that last slide, actually.
You help keep that shit so.
Yes.
I tried to lay it on there,
Yeah.
get headed off the class.
Do we get to talk later about
It's the.
the economic development?
Oh, it is? Oh.
Yeah.
It's like head them
I
off
don't mind
at the
talking about it,
pass.
but
I
what?
hate that.
They're bringing
I gotta.
Lance with Jamie and Tamara and Adam.
Gotta go back and get a shitload of dimes.
Or is it, is it, on our stuff, like what? Is it within his purview?
Yes.
Yeah.
And from his perspective, for
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah.
understanding from the county what the current environment is.
Yeah.
And how we as the county intend to engage in that environment of advocacy and economic development, great, but I don't wanna. If other people are interested in that, great, but I don't think that we as a board should be engaged in like that conversation,
Okay.
personally.
I'm actually gonna walk away because I don't know what you're talking about, I wanna keep it.
I'm talking about you.
Yeah, no. Alright, see y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
See what happens. That I didn't have a lot of in-person, I could do a lot of stuff from home, so.
Alright, we good to get going again here?
Yeah.
Alright,
Let's kick it.
let's grip it and rip it.
Introduce yourself, mister.
I'm Josh Adamson, I think I've met everybody.
Oh,
Before you
sorry, Josh,
start.
hi, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you again, Josh. Everybody, good to see you.
I've been the airport director now for just
Oh,
about
Sam.
4 years, I'll be 4 years in March. I got the position kind of in a funny way, I was working for Claire, well, not Claire, but I was working in emergency management with Kaylee Ham, who used to be the emergency manager. And the previous airport director quit in October, and it just kind of sat and sat and sat, and I'd worked at the airport before, previously when I lived in Leadville. I actually got offered the director job once before that from Brad Palmer in 2017, but I just wasn't in a place to move back yet. And I sent an email to the commissioners asking about the position, they said, oh yeah, we'll talk to you about it on Friday, and we had a meeting, and then they just kind of gave me the job. So here I am 4 years later, I feel like I'm doing a decent job, so, I've been in aviation for a long time, that emergency management job was kind of a a real career change for me. It also started during COVID, so it became a lot less variety and a lot of the exact same thing every single day, and it burned me out pretty quick. But I was an aircraft mechanic and for about 10 years, 5 of those in the Marine Corps and 4 of them in the civilian world. So I've been around aircraft for a long time. I love the field, I love aircraft. So that's where I sit now. History of the airport, I believe, as much as I can find, was constructed in somewhere around 1962. It is the highest paved, well, it's the highest airport in all of North America. So it is, we're kind of a destination place for pilots. Pilots around the world know who we are. We're 30th on the list of highest airports. South America and China and Nepal have some quite a bit. There's one that's higher than Albert in China, 14.5.
Whoa.
So, yeah, we're 30th on the list. We're not that far,
Yeah.
we're not that crazy.
Not bad worldwide.
No, the county has owned the airport since its inception. The FBO, the office where we sell items to aircraft, was historically privately run until the county purchased it or took over it in 2009. So the FBO, the fixed base operator, it's aircraft talk for basically a gas station, an airplane gas station. We offer more services than a gas station would, but that's our primary revenue generators, fuel sales. The airport was designated a public works department at that time in '09. And then the airport manager fell underneath the purview of the public works director. That since 2019, I believe, is when we were made our own department and I believe fund in 2019. So I am now a director and my immediate boss is the county manager. Since taking over the FBO, the county has made a massive amount of capital improvements at the airport. If you haven't seen what the airport used to look like, you can look up the movie Under Siege 2 with Steven Seagal. The opening of that movie takes place in fictional, but they come and steal helicopters from the Leadville Army base. And it's the airport as it existed in like 1993 or 4.
Cool.
So if you ever wanna look it up, you can see that's what we came from. It was basically a shack attached to a Quonset hut with another hangar. It was pretty ramshackle, looked pretty run down.
What's the name of the movie?
Under Siege 2.
Under Siege 2.
Yeah, it's obviously,
Sequel mode.
it's Steven Seagal, so prepare yourself, and it is entertaining but pretty dumb. The rest of the movie, I believe, is on a train, and they filmed most of that in the Eagle River Valley from between Minturn and here. So the FBO, all of that used to exist up on the old ramp. If you've been to the airport, there's an really old beat up ramp higher up above. All that used to exist there. It has since been moved down to where it is now. The county built the new FBO office and SRE, the Snow Removal Equipment Building, in 2012. I believe is when that was finished, which was a huge, nice uptick, very nice facilities. We're still commented and applauded for how nice of an FBO we have for such a small airport. Part of that we take good care of, we try to. And it is also probably one of the newest buildings in the county. And then in 2015, the county got some funding between some county share and the state. CDOT, Department of Transportation, has an aeronautics division, awesome. They're super helpful, they do great things in the aeronautics and aviation world of Colorado. They helped us fund that 11,000 square foot hangar that sits down there now, and which has been a huge revenue generator for us. And then also the runway was completely tore up and overhauled in 2019 and 20. All the runway, the taxiways, and the partial resurface of the ramp were completed at that time. We actually won the paving award for 2020, the asphalt paving project award was given to APC Southern for paving the airport. They did a phenomenal job. It is probably one of the best assets we have. It was a $5.8 million project.
Wow.
Completely funded by the FAA. And it's still, they do PCI pavement condition inspections. The state does, and they come look at pavement to see what the lifespan of it can look like and things. And ours was still all above 94%, even for 4 years later
Yeah.
on that runway. And we actually got it seal coated, so they like tarred it this summer to seal it and restripe the all the markings and everything. So it's should last for a lot longer now still, and we'll get another one of those in 5 years or so.
So it's
Another
looking
one,
pretty,
Another grant?
Another seal coat,
Oh, another seal.
yeah, pavement maintenance stuff.
Nice.
it's looking pretty sharp up there.
Yeah.
And part of that runway project too, we got all new lighting on the runways, so it's all LED lighting. It's very good for cost savings. They're more expensive to replace when one of your employees sucks them up with our giant snow blower. So they're very nice. They don't operate all the time. If you haven't noticed, you can't see them all the time. They're radio operated, so they only come on when pilots key them.
Oh, cool.
And the amount of times they click their radio, it turns on the brightness. So if you ever wonder why you don't see the runway lights, you can't see it very well from many places in town anyways.
Yeah.
That's why though. That beacon that you do see spin at night, that is a requirement, that must spin. We've had a few complaints here and there about that.
Shines right in my dad's bedroom window.
Yeah, sorry. Green side's out right now, so.
Oh,
Good. So that's the airport history. Any questions on that so far? Overview, the LXV is our airport designator, or KLXV. There's two different name types, but they're the same thing. So there's KLXV and LXV. That's what we're called. Don't ask me why it's LXV. I imagine it's something with Leadville. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. There's like Kremling's like Papa Victor, 9 Papa Victor, something like that. It's weird.
L15.
Rapid Cities is KRAP, so it's crap. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's what we are, LXV. I have 2 staff currently, and then myself would be third. We provide services to these aircraft that land in the form of general aviation. We do not offer any commercial service at the airport, so you can charter a jet through the airport. We don't do any of that ourselves. We don't host any Uniteds or smaller regional type charters and things like that. Maybe in the future, we just don't have a demand for right now. Also, our elevation, the airfield elevation kind of precludes us from some of these pieces just based on aircraft performance, which I'll get into later. We provide fuel to these aircraft, which is our primary revenue generator. We tow aircraft, we provide hangar space when we can. We sell a lot of merchandise, and many other services kind of comes with the day about how we help. 2 of us at the airport used to be aircraft mechanics, so occasionally we'll help with some troubleshooting just to help people. But we don't do any actual maintenance at the airfield on us. All airport maintenance, so the airfield maintenance or care is taken care of by us, the 3 of us at the airport. Occasionally, if we get swamped or something happens, we'll call building maintenance or public works to come assist us. The public works used to clear the runway and everything for a long time, but once it became an airport like the county operation, they took over. We staffed it, and the staff at the airport now, so we do all the plowing and airfield maintenance pieces and mowing. We don't mow much, if you can imagine, but that's all on us. I'm the airport director, but I've taught everybody how to run every piece of equipment that's there. I do it all. There's not a thing at the airport I don't know how to do. I kind of pride myself on that, but sometimes you really notice when you have full staff, because I can actually focus on this stuff and give a better product to you guys, versus trying to keep the day-to-day stuff. The airport operations always comes first, in my opinion, because we gotta keep it open. And then this stuff ends up sliding down the schedule as it gets busy. But I've been staffed fully for over a year now, and it's helped a ton with my workload. We do keep the airport open year-round. We will often not plow during snowstorms just because no one's coming in the snowstorm most of the time. that's an issue right now at the airport is no one needs to come to Leadville for the most part, it's kind of a want. So if we have bad weather, like this week is supposed to be pretty nice, so we were really busy today because the weather's finally nice. But we get these weeks where it's kind of snowy, but it doesn't snow much, which sucks, it slows us down a lot. So that's kind of a market we wanna grow into is how do we get people to come here more frequently, even if the weather's a little inclement or something like that. Also, like I mentioned with our altitude, we host pretty much every major helicopter manufacturer in the world has tested at the airport, various forms of actual full model testing to helicopter blades, tail rotors, new tail boom designs, you name it, they've tested at the airport. Sikorsky, Bell, Leonardo helicopters, they've been out the last couple summers, 3 summers from Milan, Italy. We've hosted Korea Aerospace. Erickson Air Crane's been here before. It's fun to see that helicopter in the hangar because its rotor's 72 feet and our door's 75 feet. And then we've also had a fair share of fixed wing, which isn't as common. So like jets, they'll usually come up for a shorter stint because they're much more mobile and they have less. They can fly higher, easier, so they get data quicker and test easier than helicopters do. We've also I've leaned into that market. I've put it out on our website to push that we're not necessarily just for aircraft. Last year we hosted Polaris snowmobiles, so we groomed the side of the runway off the edge and we gave them a track, 6,400 foot long track that they tested snowmobiles for about 2 weeks on.
That's fun.
They, doing 117 miles an hour down the side of the runway with a snowmobile.
Yeah.
So, that Kawasaki's been up a couple summers testing, like UTVs. I've had a fair amount of unmanned systems coming up. There's been a lot of market coming in that. So I've had Anduril Industries out of California, who's a huge defense contractor now. They've been up, they're usually up about 3 or 4 times a year testing unmanned systems or engines for their unmanned systems or electronics and things is some of their stuff's kind of scary what they do, what they tell me about.
That's just what they tell you.
Yeah.
Is there a fee for testing, and is there noise complaints from the neighbors, because those helicopters, they start at 4 in the morning?
We usually limit them, we ask them to start no earlier than 6.
Okay.
We do have noise complaints on occasion. I will say we're probably one of the lightest noise complaint airports in the state at least.
Okay.
Our topography there is really beneficial, that it's kind of above, so all the sound kind of stays over the top. I mean, how often do you guys hear a helicopter or a jet, like other than in transit?
Yeah.
You don't really hear it at the airport.
Yeah.
It is nice.
Not even.
The other piece is we don't have a lot of residential around the airport.
Yeah.
And a big part of that too, and a huge helpful part is the county owns most of the parcels surrounding the airport. So it behoove you, in land use pieces, maybe we just don't let anyone build houses around airports, because the FAA spends millions of dollars a year on noise abatement programs because people build their house around an airport wondering why it was cheap and then complain about the noise at the airport.
Yeah.
We do get some complaints from helicopter testing though. Typically we're on the south end. Dave Tenike, if you know who he is, he has a house down that way. He didn't call this year, but he's called in the past.
Yeah.
We don't get many though, it's actually pretty nice. But I think having us start at 6 AM, no earlier than 6 AM has helped a lot. I also get noise complaints off the airport, which I can't control. Those are helicopters, military flying around at night, like I don't have a say in those things.
Yeah.
That is called the FAA. Though people don't know that, so they call me. Yeah, so overview of the airport, we try and get some community engagement because there's a lot of people in town who sometimes don't even know that we exist. So we do the 4th of July cookout. I think I've seen most of you there at some point or another. If most of you know or have seen, that's a pretty big event for us. We host, I think in the last 2 years, we've had roughly 900 to 1,000 people. We actually ran out of food last year, which we hadn't done before. usually we have enough food left over that we host the county barbecue on the airport dime. But we didn't, we actually had to order more food for the county barbecue because we didn't have any more food. So it keeps getting bigger every year. I do advertise it a little bit. I don't spend much money on it, but it's more of a local thing than a fly-in. That we bill it as a fly-in because it's fun for everybody to see planes and helicopters.
Especially when they went off the ground.
Oh yeah, and then we had one crash in the middle of it last year. That was awesome. Yeah, that was, I'm sure everybody was,
It was entertaining.
that was,
Thank
haven't seen
goodness
that
nobody was
before.
hurt.
Yeah, it was the equivalent of an aircraft going in the ditch. Just went off the end and the nose gear folded.
Oh,
Ended up totaling that plane out though. Yeah. They took the wings off it in the ramp and put it on a trailer and shipped it out of there.
is Tom trying to start a flight school out there, or?
They technically kind of already are operating a flight school there,
Okay.
not directly, they're using a plane and he has a few certified flight instructors that are operating or teaching out of his plane, so they're renting it from him.
Okay, that's cool.
It's not as robust as I'd like or Tom.
Yeah, not many
Tom
people-
wants it to be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But there is a market there and people have been learning. The old FBO owner we did, if you know Ursula
Yeah.
Gilgulin, she used to run the FBO for like decades. If there's people that come in that, I flew here in 1982 and there was a lady named Ursula running the place.
Yeah.
She used to teach flight lessons out of Leadville, so I have a number of people that learned to fly here in Leadville from Ursula.
Cool.
So it is, the market's there, it's just gotta get going again, I think. AMCG performed a rent study, that's a company acronym, I cannot remember what it stands for. Aircraft, it's aviation management, something, but they do like rent studies, they specialize in this stuff, they're based out of Denver, they're very good, they highly recommend it. They did a rent study and lease study for us this past fall. That gave us some really valuable data in determining market rent for renting our hangar, and then also the ground lease prices for building. So if like Tom's proposed, he wants to build a hangar at the airport. They lease the ground from us, they sign a 30-year lease, that they can have an extension, and then they build the improvements on it, they pay taxes on the improvements, and then they pay a per square foot lease rate for that parcel. So it gave us the data for that, which we needed or we didn't need, but surely it was helpful in justifying market rent and rates for these pieces. Cause that's often, it's a negotiation, these things can be talked about and negotiated through these dealings to come down or up and things like that.
Is there more interest than there is hangar space right now?
Yes, I've had calls, I've actually been logging all the calls recently for jet storage and stuff like that. I had a guy call me from Dubai
Jet storage,
to put his Gulfstream G650.
and he's probably living in Aspen or something?
He wants to put it inside, he probably has a place in Vail, who knows, I don't know.
There's no place, I'm sure they're maxed out over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how Mike was explaining it, that
Yeah.
it would be cheaper for people from over there to fly in and then their pilots and their planes come over here, park, gas up, hang out for
Got it.
days.
Got it.
Yes, Aspen in particular has no room. If you've ever driven by the Aspen airport, it kinda looks like
They're
a
like on top
junkyard
of each
almost.
other,
yeah.
Cause they park them tail, they like lace them in there.
That's crazy.
But Aspen has 300 to 350 operations a day. And almost all of those jets reposition, so they'll drop off whoever, rich person or whatever it is, they drop them off and they fly to Rifle, Junction or Centennial or one of the Front Range airports, and they stay there. That's where they park, cause there's no room at Aspen. Also, those aircraft are less likely to get stuck there because of snow.
Right.
But someone told me a figure that Centennial in the winters, like 50% of their fuel sales come from Aspen overflow.
So we could try and get some of that.
If I had 2 of those jets a week, my fuel numbers would double.
Well, and that's why we started working on this project, was that realizing that this could be a significant revenue generator for the county.
Yes,
Not
it
just
is,
with this,
yeah.
but with the rentals.
We got a lot of dirt to move.
We do. The other piece too, like I like to bring up is, we build the hangars, we don't make a lot of money on the ground lease per se, like that, the ground lease itself, there's enough money in it to keep them with skin in the game. They have to keep the building nice, there's rules. But we realize a little bit of money from that, but it might be like $3,000 a year or something for that ground lease. And then there's taxes on the building that the county will realize. The big increase for us is more aircraft, and more aircraft means more fuel sales, and that's where our numbers go up.
Yeah.
Even if we gave away a hangar for free to a jet, we'd still see income because we would sell 1,000, 2,000 gallons of jet fuel at a time at $7.25 a gallon, and I buy it at $2.47 a gallon right now.
Holy
Mhm.
You can understand just how massive that margin can be.
Mhm.
And I actually lowered my fuel rates just because the margins didn't need to be that high, so.
Do the locals get a little discount, or is there a sliding scale for, like, somebody local keeps a plane there versus the Sheik of Iran or whoever wants to come?
Sure, most of the locals don't buy jet fuel, so in our 100 low
I see.
lead price, so we sell two types of fuel. We sell avgas, which is 100 low lead. It's the only leaded fuel on the planet or in the US anymore. Because all the small aircraft engines, they need the anti-detonation features of lead. They're working to replace that. That EPA is pushing it hard, really pushing hard to try and get lead replacement fuel out there. We just don't have it yet. And then we sell.
Technology's not there?
There's some stuff on the market now that they're trying to plug in, and it seems to be working, but it hasn't gotten to a scale yet enough to make it cost effective for anyone of our size to even be able to afford the fuel to sell it. So a lot of places are starting to kind of show that they have that. But really, I think we would just lose money on it at the moment. Well, and then we sell Jet A. There's several different types of jet fuel. They're all different kerosene types. So jet fuel is just kerosene, it's oil. It's very similar to diesel. So we sell that to turbine aircraft burn jet fuel. There's a couple small piston aircraft that run like a diesel engine, so they burn jet fuel. There's not very many. So yes, but for the local guys, for avgas, like Tom, we have a deal with Tom because he has so much traffic and stuff with us that we have a discounted rate for a local tenant. And he rents hangar space and gives us students coming in and buying t-shirts and hats and everything, definitely offsets the price. But avgas prices have remained fairly high. Like bulk price for us. I just bought a load of that at $4.29 a gallon, I believe, which is the cheapest I've seen it in a long time. But during COVID, there was a point where it got to $5.90 a gallon bulk, and I was selling it at $6.20, just trying to make enough margin on it, but still not. The other part is a lot of people don't want to take fuel at our airport because they're too heavy and they have performance issues at the airport.
Right.
They can't leave with that much fuel.
They wanna make sure they get off the ground.
Yes.
Midnight.
So we don't sell very much low lead in general. I usually get maybe two tanks, like 2 truckloads a year of that. And we have a 12,000 gallon tank. So I'd get maybe 2 trucks of 7,000, 8,000 gallons a year. And that'll fill us the whole year. With jet fuel, I usually, especially in summer months, I'll get a truck once or twice a month of 7,000 or 8,000 gallons because we sell much more jet fuel. Avgas it's kind of a nice extra on the top. We offer it so people have it if they need it. But really jet fuel for us, leaning into jet fuel is the big push. It's also much safer to deal with, jet.
Works great in certain vintage OHV registered off-road vehicles.
100 low lead does, yes.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have a catalytic converter.
So, I hate to prolong this, I just got one more question. Is Tom the only one interested in building a hangar, or would that go out to like an RFP for anybody, say this guy from Dubai or wherever, or is the county gonna maybe try and build some?
So, the AMCG part came out, now we have Mead and Hunt, who's another engineering planning firm. They're doing the concept layout for us right now. Right now they give us 2 concepts and now they're gonna meld together like what we like between both of them. We'll have that in front of you guys here hopefully within a week or two.
Okay.
Just a kind of a guideline for what we want that growth to look like at the airport for expansion, particularly to the north where we already built that taxi lane. Tom's not the only one. Tom has two other prospects that are involved with him to build one hangar that'll suit all three of their needs. But I have probably 4 right now that would be like, I wanna build. The moment you give me a lease, I will order a building.
Wow.
And then I have probably another 10 behind that have been like, hey, once this starts going, give me a call.
Yeah.
And then once we open those floodgates though, it's gonna get busy. Like we're not gonna be able to keep up with demand.
Yeah.
Eagle is maxed out, they have built out every square inch of space that they can at their airport. Aspen, like I said, is built out. BV's still got a lot of expansion room. They'll be a competitor in that regard, which is okay. They're just lower elevation, it's hard to compete. They have a longer runway and 7,900 feet versus 9,900 feet is a big difference.
But it sounds like even if BV maxes out and we max out here,
There will be
There's-
enough to max all.
there's more demand than
Yes.
any supply we could add.
And we're not gonna run out of room anytime soon, because we're looking only on the east side of the runway right now. We also own all that west side property, and then even outside the fence, the airport boundary is not just the fence, we own outside that as
Huge.
well. And then the county even owns beyond that, that's not FAA funded. But we'll get into revenues here. The airport, I pride myself on that I do my best and try my hardest to make sure that I run inside my own budget. I live within my own revenues.
Why is 24 so much lower revenue than all the other years? Is that a typo or wouldn't be the first typo we've come across? but-
I looked at that, and I asked about it, but I think it was a typo.
Okay,
I don't know, yeah, cause no, 24 was, they hadn't finished the numbers yet, I just looked at it today, cause that's
Okay.
last year's. Then that's also just the budgeted revenue, so it was,
not actuals.
that was not actuals, no, I think I saw it just today, it was like 731,000 for the year in revenue.
So it's, essentially self-sustaining.
Yes, for the most part, I will say we are grant funded from the federal sense.
Yeah.
The FAA gives us, every year we get $150,000 of entitlement money, is what they call it. As most of you know, $150,000, that's been a total dollar amount since the 90s, they have not changed it. So that dollar amount has really lost value, especially in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
We get that 150, but it's hard to do anything with 150 and we can't just sit on it because it's grant money. So that we are in what we call a transfer program with 3 other airports. I think it's Ray, Walsenburg, and Holyoke, one of those, something like that. So we'll transfer our 150 to one of those airports depending on the schedule. So we'll get a lump sum of either 300,000 or 600,000 based on the schedule for actually doing capital improvement projects.
Gotcha, so
That's
it's just
part of the
rolling plan of, each.
Yep, so I have what we call the CIP that I fill out with the state, that's for the feds as well. It's a capital improvement plan, ours is planned out all the way through 2030 right now. The state makes us do that, I have to submit one every year. They wanna see every project, we have dreams on it pretty much, even if we can't fund it or not, cause the state also does, all of our federal grants, the state will match 5%. So of the 10% match that we're required, the state pays 5%, so we only end up with a 5% match. It's really nice benefit, especially if you're doing some bigger, more expensive projects in the $1 million range. That 10% match suddenly becomes 50,000 versus 100,000. That's a huge help. And then revenues, I've been pretty conservative on projected revenues just because some years, just the weather can be slow us down so much. I could have if it just starts snowing finally starts snowing a lot, I'll just be slow. So I'm usually fairly conservative with numbers, but I think once we get, and this is showing what we have right now. I have not planned or shown anything for hangar development and more aircraft storage and things like that. So if we exist as we sit right now, this is what I think my revenues will be. And honestly, I'm, like I said, I've been fairly conservative on my projections, and also just fuel prices is hard to guess. I've tried, like, it's hard. So I'd say these will probably be higher, but that's what I'm gonna stick with for now. And also, I think having these budgeted for revenues, or sorry, the past one, having these lower kinda helps me stay underneath, like keeps me a little more honest in my budgeting, for expenditures, so. You can go to the next one.
Great.
Expenditures, like Adam, are kind of these lines, these lumps of, budget codes don't work well for us at the moment. They don't show a lot of granularity, like at the airport, like my supplies right now, you're like, what am I buying in supplies? Well, I buy jet fuel. Usually a load of jet fuel is about $39,000 to go, so, but it doesn't show you guys kind of what it shows. Also, if you go, can you go back one slide too? So the revenues you can show, like this one's really bad, like charges for services, we offer a lot of different services. There's not a lot of granularity in that.
Yeah.
And it's been discussed and talked about, it's just been hard. I know they're trying to clean up the chart of accounts.
Yeah, and that's just for these presentations, we know you've probably got line items.
Yeah, and I can parse these out better for you guys if you wanna see them, but you can log in on the Encode system if you've been briefed on that to see it yourself. Expenses, obviously, like most departments, personnel's pretty high up there, we have 3 employees right now. I do my best to try and give those guys a good wage, they work around very expensive pieces of equipment. Also, I find that paying them a little bit more, you can ask Tim, I said if I could get my guys more pay and that means I don't get a pay raise, then that's better peace of mind for me, because having some continuity of staff at the airport is huge.
Isn't that industry in a severe shortage of trained personnel as well?
Yes.
Like across the country, there's like empty towers because they can't find people to.
The mechanics, like I get cold calls from companies asking me to come turn wrenches again and stuff, and they're like, what'll it take? And I usually give them a pretty exorbitant number.
$1 million.
Yeah. Well, my old job, they asked me if I wanted to run the road team in Aspen, and I said, you can't afford me, and they're like, I was like, you can't pay me enough to live there, like, literally, you cannot pay me enough to live there, you won't be able to afford it. Not even like what I want it to be, like, I won't be able to live there.
Yeah.
It
So,
does seem really low though, for 3 staff. What are the pay ranges of the other 2?
Jim, I believe, is about $24 an hour right now, and Matt's just probably approaching $27 an hour now.
So between 45 and 50,000 a year?
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Jim's probably getting close to 50, and Matt's about 53 or 54,
Okay.
I believe, if I remember that right.
That's full-time work?
Both my staff are really happy. Matt was a Marine as well. He was an aircraft mechanic for a while. He's kind of worked trades. He was a snowcat operator for Beaver Creek for quite a few years. He says it often, he'll put it in his performance review that he wants to retire out of the airport.
Nice.
So he's very happy. Jim is a retired elementary school PE teacher that I hired, and he's been a great help and loves the job. And so like I said, I'd rather pay them more and take less if that means I can keep them around. Also, it's kind of not like I wouldn't say moronic, but just a weird trend in like the aviation industry of like, we call it line service professionals, line operations, flight line operations are very underpaid considering what they work on, what they do. They're working around aircraft that are, if we have a jet, I mean, some of those jets are like $40-50 million aircraft, new.
Yeah.
But like making a mistake around some of those can be very costly, you can lose your life, like you can cause fuel spills, environmental issues, and they're very underpaid in they're usually considered entry-level positions.
Honey, that is moronic, you can
It
totally
is,
say that.
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cause, and like, they're the ones who take a lot of liability, cause they're moving aircraft, or towing aircraft.
Right.
So, and that's become an issue with us, is we move enough aircraft in the hangar now that, really, you should always have somebody watching as you tow,
Yeah,
so you can wing watch.
yeah.
Ideally you want two, but one is better than yourself. That I've been exploring or considering adding another position at the airport of part-time or full-time to make sure that we have two people there at all times to just prevent that from happening.
Sure, yeah.
Cause the liability on the county would be it would be cheaper to pay somebody than it would be to fix some of these planes if you cause a bad enough accident.
Are you guys participating in the internship program?
Yes, I've hosted, I believe, 5 now.
Nice.
All of them have been great except for the last one, that one I had to terminate her, but, I've had very good feedback. I had one for about a year.
Nice.
I really enjoy that program. I've gone and talked to the high school several times, to the internship teacher with their classes and stuff. As you know, I coach, so I like taking part in the development of young people in town. Cause eventually I'm gonna live with them in town at some point as adults, and I'd rather have them be somewhat decent adults, or have a chance, you know, that I gotta live with them in the future, so. Yeah, that's the airport in a nutshell. I do my best to really try and make money and stay positive, so. Short-term goals, you mentioned the RFP, we're gonna put out, that's the current proposed process for us right now, is to put out an RFP for likely 3 or 4 hangar spots that we have developed, depending on the size of the proposed, what we put in there. There is some, like I said, we'll have more discussions about this later, I don't wanna bring it up too much, but I think like with some, you know, the RFP, you'll be selecting, this will be your purview to select who we're gonna award these to, and I think there should be some weight given to local, but if there is a business opportunity, which I'm not sure will happen on this go of hangar development, but if someone comes in that wants to build like a aircraft maintenance, you know, thing and wants to take that whole spot, I think we need to, you know, explore like, hey, what's this revenue look like versus that?
Will these hangars have bathrooms? And can the septic system support more toilets?
It can, I think per the current rules, no, cause it's on the same rules as like a house, like bedrooms,
Yeah.
though the hangar bathroom gets used like you flush a toilet like twice a day, that's it, and maybe a sink. There's no shower, there's no washing machines and dishwashers. But the current rules with community planning development, I think we'd have to either rewrite some rules or we'd have to expand septic capacity. Tom actually gave me a great idea with collection tanks, is a kind of a holdout or like a holdover till we can get sanitary sewer at the airport, cause we don't have it right now.
Is there a FAA grant available for running sewer?
No, unfortunately, no, you can ask Tim, I've ran my head into the wall for years now trying to find any sort of money to pay for infrastructure. And it just, every time I apply for something outside of the FAA, they just throw me back in the FAA stuff. They're like, well, that's FAA. So it's been exhausting and a struggle to try and, I'm like, well, I'm gonna be limited on growth without sanitary sewer. I did find an airport that uses collection tanks that is an actual viable thing. And like I said, they're so infrequently used that those would actually be a pretty affordable way to add a bathroom to a hangar. So Tom actually brought that up to me, I was really thankful, because I hadn't even crossed my mind about collection tanks. So that is kind of a way forward for us right now.
Nice.
And we can add more septic, but as you know, you can only have so much septic per acre, like the soil can handle.
Yeah.
So.
Plus it's expensive. Do you know the distance to the other side of the highway is where the line runs, right?
Yeah, it's current estimates, I could pull them up for you if you wanna see pricing.
Sure. If we got time, do we have the library coming?
No, Brenna's out sick,
Okay.
but we do have planning commission at 4,
Okay.
I think Andy's ready for a break. Maybe I'm just projecting, maybe I am.
I'd like I need definitely 10 minutes before planning, but this is great, yeah.
We We'll move, planning's gonna sit here and we're gonna move there.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
The hemorrhoid,
So this was the cost estimates, I had our Kimley Horn is our engineering firm that we contract through to do all of our engineering. Mead and Hunt we used as a separate planning service. So Kimley Horn is my primary one. You have to have costs or rough costs for the CIP that I mentioned. So sanitary sewer, this one was to install sanitary sewer manhole, it looks like, well, this one included, 3-phase power and install gas. Sure, I thought she was supposed to parse this out, but, roughly we're looking at about, well, this phase 1 was $1.7 million and then phase 2 is $770,000.
Okay.
So roughly about 3 million, build in some contingency in there just to,
Did you say gas?
yeah, we're also on propane at the airport.
So that 3 million would be bringing gas up from the highway?
From the highway, yeah. Well, yes, no, cause there's not a current gas line at the moment, I don't believe, they've been talking about extending one to Stringtown as well.
Yeah.
I approached Excel, Tim and I both did, we had a meeting in Excel. We asked Excel to see if there was any interest in them providing these, hey, let's add these utility updates, you can get the gas revenue from heating hangars, which is pretty expensive.
Where's that gas line, sorry, the gas line on Loop Road? I thought that came from the airport.
No, there is the high pressure line crosses to the west of the airport.
Oh.
But I don't believe there's a stub up to the airport road as it sits right now. 3-phase power is very close, which is good, cause that's expensive too,
Yeah.
so. The crusher, that Mike probably showed you, the county's mine right there, that is 3-phase power. So that's just a jaunt up the road for that. So I've been working, trying to find money to pay for infrastructure for the past 4 years of this job.
So if we got requests for proposals for hangars, maybe we could build some of that. Ann was talking about user fees or whatever, they could pay into this fee, we front the money and we get paid back by the hangar fees.
We could, the other part of that too is we will have to do some paving that will be on our dime. Cause basically the FAA's rule of eligibility for a lot of these funded projects is it a driveway or a road? If it's a driveway, it's serving one person or a few people, it's not serving the public, it's not gonna be funded. If it's a road, then they'll pay for it. It's convoluted sometimes.
From 24 all the way up to the gate there, or just from the gate to the?
Oh, no,
access
just paving just like aircraft surfaces.
road? Oh, gotcha.
That type of paving.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, like basically 15 feet in front of the hangar as it sits right now is federally eligible pavement.
Yeah.
So we did that seal coat project this summer. Almost all of it was funded by the FAA, but then that chunk behind that to the east, and then the parking lots and stuff, and then some repairs and crack repair, that fell on the county. So I came to the board and asked for $56,000, that was the cost of it, to pay for that additional pavement maintenance. Cause it was a lot cheaper to do it while everything was mobilized, and it'll save us from having to pave sooner. Some of those we'll have to do some maintenance on our dime, but like the upper road right now is a little beat up. But paving has gotten just astronomically expensive, I do not know why. Usually asphalt's like $180 a ton, is like, that's expensive for was. We had a quote for that taxi lane that bid us at $380 a ton for asphalt.
Oh my god.
For that, so it's
The oil.
yeah, it's the oil and then the distance that they have to truck. So often if we can couple a big project like that with the local, like the highway getting paid and stuff, that's a huge help. Cause one of those companies will bid on it as kind of a side project, and then the plant's already here and stuff, so.
Nice.
We're setting up a plant this summer. Maybe willing to sell asphalt to us at cost, so
That'd be sweet, maybe I can do that for a road, it's not much, so.
it's too late, I mean, but may not happen again for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think once they're done, we'll be in possession of our own asphalt hot plant, won't we? With the gravel right next to it.
The other piece I wanted to show you, the state, like I said, CDOT Aeronautics is phenomenal. The state pays for so much stuff just cause it improves airports, they really invest a lot of money into airports. All the fuel excise taxes that are charged go to fund CDOT Aeronautics, and then they disperse a large portion of that back to the airports as revenue. So honestly, it's nice for us, cause I don't sell that, I don't really help a lot of other airports out, cause my fuel sales are pretty small. The DIA sells an absolute ton of fuel.
Yeah.
So we get to realize a lot of their revenue in that regard, that tax revenue comes to help us out. They also do an equipment roundup and then a sale every year. So they'll gather all the airport equipment that people wanna sell, particularly DIA, and then they do like a draft. They draw your name out of a hat, your airport and a number, and that's where you get a pick from the list. And then they pay 80% of your first purchase, and then 50% of 2 and 3, and then after that, it's on you. The prices are already usually really agreeable. So like DIA was selling a tractor, a tow broom as they call it, so it's a snow plow with a trailer that has a broom and a cradle. And it's a $600,000 or $700,000 piece of equipment new, and they were listed for sale for $60,000, and I got one for $12,000, because the state paid 80% this year. So huge one, and then they actually just approved, because there's a lot of aircraft tracking software now. So they actually approved $3,000 a year of, you ask for reimbursement, but they, so I have airport runway stats now. They gave me a free demo until it came online, and this will give you, so it gives you real-time live view if there's anyone flying in the airspace. It gives me all of my operations. And you can get reports and everything from this, so between the 21st and today, we've had a total of 30 operations, 12 landings, 12 takeoffs, and some touch and goes and stuff. So it really helps us give you guys a better view of like what our traffic is at the airport.
Cool.
I just got this in late October, so it's building data. We don't have a year's worth of data yet, but I think it's a huge tool that we can use to kind of leverage what's going on at the airport.
That's really cool.
The state is also, there will be coming out, the CDOT does the airport economic impact study. They do it every 5 years, I believe. And that is completed or near completion, so that should be coming out. And it really shows the impact of the airport beyond the airport fence. So they do a study to show what kind of economic impact we had outside of our fence, which is huge. They actually did a really cool thing this year on the website, you can look it up, that they have a map that shows all the planes and where they came from to Leadville. So like each state will, like, goes by months and it'll light up a state and it'll show a plane and it tells you where, like, we've had some international ones and stuff, it's pretty cool.
That's really neat.
So, but yeah, this is it, the airport's really pretty, I'm sure you saw. We're dedicated, all of us are passionate. We really wanna grow the airport, we're trying to get it going. And I would say, like, basically, not the sky's the limit, but we could generate a lot of revenue through the airport. I think that would help the county out and offset and fund other projects and things. And I think it's a big boon for us that we could realize, but it will take some capital investment from the local side. But I think that's a good investment in my opinion, because it generates tax dollars by using tax dollars, and I think that's a good way forward, and I like efficient use of my tax money, so.
Me too.
Any questions?
Thank you, Josh.
Nice.
That was
Thank you.
pretty thorough, thank you.
And like I said, we'll talk more about the hangar development pieces, and we'll have an actual work session.
Yeah.
To kind of bring you guys up to speed on that. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of years of work, trying to get this going, so, we're just trying to make sure we do it right now, so we don't end up with a 30-year building that we really, or a business partner that we just really don't like, cause Lake County's been pretty good at that, huh, Chris?
Has been.
Keeps her busy.
The one thing about FAA funded, like those leases though, is there's a reversionary reversionary clause, right, Chris? Yeah, so,
Yeah,
reversionary clause in there that all of the improvements will go to the airport at the end of that lease.
it comes to the county.
Yes.
Yeah, when the lease expires, any improvements become the property of the county.
So you can extend beyond, there's a 30-year right now is our, we approved this, that was 23. Jesus, how long ago?
It was, yeah,
We got a 30-year lease with a 10-year extension. That's, we moved that used to be like a 20-year lease with like a 20-year with a 10-year, but that doesn't pencil out very well for guys anymore. So we moved it to a 30-year lease with a 10-year extension. That lease can go longer than that, it's up to your purview, the airport's purview to extend that beyond that, that's just kind of the guidance from the FAA. Also, there's just a lot of rules, there's 37 grant assurances that I have to follow to operate the airport with federal dollars. So, quite a few of those apply to hangar leases, ground leases, so.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Josh.
thank you,
Yeah, take a
Josh.
break.
Thanks a lot, man.
And just real quick for tomorrow, so we're actually gonna start at 9:30. The city administrator has a medical appointment, so she will not be here at 9. Starting at 9:30, we'll hear from Leadville Sanitation District, then Parkville Water, then the Forest Service, then CSU Extension, and Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue. We break till 2 p.m. where we'll hear from Climax, School District, and CMC.
Thank you.
It's a full day right there.
Mm-hmm. Full week.
Every day.
Right here, just 2 little square inches, square feet.
It's like every day last week too.
There were things in the chat, what happened with those? More stuff on,
Housing.
okay. Mel, you and I know, found a time to meet next week. Have you all heard from Mel to check in, or?
I have not, unless I missed her email, she's more than welcome to reach out to me directly as well.
Great.
More than happy to communicate with her, she seems to have a lot of interest in what's going on here, so I'd like to answer any questions she has.
I can
Yeah.
answer that one for her real quick. I don't know if you heard Mel, building housing by the airport is, may sound like a great idea, but it just becomes a huge headache. Currently, the paving we need the housing's not gonna help, we need paving on the airport for aircraft to use. So I'm not looking for paving access for the airport necessarily, so housing wouldn't help in that regard, plus it would just end up becoming more of a headache because of noise complaints. A big part for us is the county does own those parcels, so we're exploring doing a airport industrial park or business park. It doesn't have, I don't know why everyone calls it the airport, but it doesn't have anything,
Yeah.
it's just the proximity thing, I think.
Yeah.
But, so there's like an industrial park, that stuff would help with kind of justifying some of those infrastructure costs. Knowing that, hey, these are going towards, also, you're literally on the ground moving towards where we plan to build something that's going to need this as well.
Right.
So.
Thanks, Josh.
Great, thanks.
Mel, don't forget to reach out to Matt and Andy so you can get input from all 3 commissioners to have a good chat. I'm also sorry we don't have time to get into more of your questions while we're training. Okay.
Alright, well, it is 3:49 p.m., January 27th, Monday. We are closing this work session of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, commissioners.